Have you ever had that moment when your entire world shifts on its axis? When everything you thought was solid suddenly turns to sand beneath your feet? Mine happened on what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life, our 12th anniversary celebration. But instead of champagne toasts and loving memories, I got the shock of my lifetime when my husband's mistress walked through the door. What happened next? Let's just say my response left the entire room in stunned silence and changed the course of my life forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I've always loved autumn in Portland. The way the leaves turn that perfect shade of amber against our gray skies, the smell of rain-soaked cedar, the excuse to wrap yourself in oversized sweaters while clutching mugs of something warm. It was during one of those perfect October evenings, 12 years ago, that Nathan proposed to me on the East Bank Esplanade with the city lights reflecting on the Willamette River. So it felt poetic to celebrate our anniversary each year as the leaves began to change. This year, our 12th, felt especially significant. We'd finally finished renovating the craftsman bungalow we'd poured our hearts into. My art studio in the converted garage was complete, with skylights that bathed my pottery wheel in natural light. Nathan's financial advising career had taken off, and I'd recently been offered my first solo exhibition at the Riverfront Gallery, a dream I'd been working toward since I first touched clay in high school. "It's perfect timing," I told my Aunt Diana as we prepared the cabin at Lake Oswego for the anniversary gathering. 12 years married, house complete, careers flourishing. It feels like we're entering a new chapter. Diana smiled as she arranged wildflowers in a vase I'd thrown especially for the occasion. "You deserve this happiness, Jess. After everything with your parents, watching you build this beautiful life with Nathan has been my greatest joy." Diana and her husband Marcus were the only family I had left after losing my parents in a car accident when I was 22. They'd stepped in without hesitation, becoming the solid foundation I needed to rebuild my life. Having them host our anniversary celebration at their lakeside cabin felt right. They'd witnessed our relationship from the first date to our wedding day on this very property. "Nathan's been acting strange lately," I admitted, smoothing the tablecloth. "Distant, working late more than usual." Diana paused, her hands hovering over the flowers. "Marriage has seasons, honey. You two have been renovating that house for years while building your careers. It's exhausting." "I know," I nodded, arranging hand-thrown plates at each place setting. Each one was unique, crafted during different years of our marriage. "I've planned a weekend getaway for us next month. Just the two of us in a cabin on the coast. No phones, no work, just reconnecting." The sound of cars pulling into the gravel driveway signaled the arrival of our guests. Zoe arrived first, my fellow art teacher and confidant, bearing a bottle of wine and her signature, enthusiasm. Marcus returned from town with the catered food. More friends filtered in. Colleagues from Nathan's firm, neighbors who'd become friends, former classmates who'd stuck around. But no Nathan. I checked my phone again. No messages, no calls. He'd texted earlier saying he was wrapping up something at work and would meet us at the cabin. That was 3 hours ago. "He's probably stuck in traffic," Zoe offered, handing me a glass of wine. "Friday evening commute from downtown can be brutal." I smiled tightly, checking the time again. 7:30. The party had been underway for an hour. Nathan was never late. Punctuality was practically his religion. I'd teased him about it throughout our relationship, setting our clocks ahead to ensure we arrived places on time. At 8 o'clock, I heard another car on the gravel. Relief flooded through me. The cabin door opened, and Nathan stepped inside, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His tie was loose, hair mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly, a nervous habit I knew well. "Sorry I'm late," he called out, smiling too broadly. Had a situation at work. I crossed the room to greet him, but stopped halfway when another figure appeared in the doorway behind him. She was young, mid-20s at most, with the kind of polished appearance that spoke of careful curation. Long chestnut hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. Her dress, a simple black sheath, looked effortlessly expensive in that way only truly expensive things can. When she smiled, perfect white teeth flashed between glossy lips. "You must be Jessica," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you." The room went quiet, the kind of heavy silence that has weight and substance. I felt every eye shift between this stranger, Nathan, and me, watching, waiting. "Jessica," Nathan stepped forward, his voice strained. "This is Vanessa Collins. She works with me at the firm." My mind raced to place her. Nathan had never mentioned a Vanessa. I knew most of his colleagues. Many of them were here tonight. "Nice to meet you," I said automatically, years of social conditioning kicking in. I didn't take her hand. Something in Nathan's posture, a tension in his shoulders, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, triggered an alarm deep inside me. 12 years of knowing someone creates an intuitive language. I could read disaster in the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. "Vanessa is more than a colleague, actually," Nathan continued, his voice dropping. "We've been seeing each other." The wine glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Red liquid splashed across my white dress, looking remarkably like blood. "Nathan," Vanessa's voice carried a warning note. "We discussed how we would do this. They were a we. Seeing each other," I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "You've been seeing each other." I looked between them, noting how they stood, not quite touching, but gravitating toward one another like paired magnets. "How long?" "Jessica, maybe we should talk privately," Nathan suggested, glancing uncomfortably at our friends and family who stood frozen in shock. "How long?" The words came out harder this time. 2 years, Vanessa answered when Nathan hesitated. "We met when I joined the firm. 2 years, half the time it took to build my studio, longer than it took to renovate our kitchen. While I'd been creating pottery for our home, he'd been creating a separate life." I felt a hand on my shoulder. Diana, her presence warm and solid. "Nathan, what are you doing?" she asked, her normally gentle voice edged with steel. "I wanted to wait until after the party," Nathan said, running a hand through his hair again. "This isn't how I planned to tell you." "Tell me what exactly?" My voice was eerily calm. "That you've been cheating on me? That you brought your mistress to our anniversary party? Please, Nathan, tell me what exactly you plan to say after we celebrated 12 years of marriage." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "I told him this was inappropriate, but I thought you deserved to meet me face to face." "This isn't just a fling, Jessica. Nathan and I are in love." Someone gasped. Zoe, probably. Marcus moved to stand beside Diana and me, forming a protective barrier. "In love," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "How convenient." "It just happened," Nathan said, his voice pleading. "I never meant to hurt you." Something snapped inside me then, a tether breaking. The shock receded just enough for anger to surge forward. Yet, here we are at our anniversary party, with you introducing me to your mistress. Seems like hurting me is exactly what you meant to do. "Jessica," he started, reaching for me. "Don't." I stepped back, bumping into the table where 12 handcrafted plates marked 12 years of what I now realized was a lie. "Is that why you've been working late? Is that why you've been distant? Because you've been building a life with someone else while I was building a home for us?" "It's complicated," Nathan said. "Actually, it's remarkably simple," I replied, my voice steadying. "You cheated. For 2 years you lied to my face every day. You watched me pour my heart into our home, into us, while you were giving yourself to someone else. Vanessa stepped forward. Jessica, I understand this is a shock, but you understand nothing. I cut her off, my gaze never leaving Nathan. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to just keep living in ignorance while you played house with your girlfriend? I was going to tell you after the exhibition, Nathan admitted quietly. I didn't want to jeopardize your opportunity. A harsh laugh escaped me. How considerate of you. The room remained in suspended animation, no one daring to move or speak. These were people who had known us for years, who had celebrated holidays with us, helped us move furniture, brought food when we were sick, and now they were witnesses to the implosion of what they thought was a happy marriage. I looked around at the faces, some averted in discomfort, others watching with undisguised shock. This party was meant to celebrate our past and future together. Instead, it had become the site of our ending. I have something to say. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I announced, my voice carrying across the silent room. I reached for my wine glass before remembering it lay shattered at my feet, like my marriage. Diana wordlessly handed me hers. I'd like to propose a toast, I continued, lifting the glass. To honesty. Something that's been missing from my marriage for quite some time, apparently. I looked directly at Nathan and Vanessa. I've spent 12 years believing I was building a life with someone who respected me enough to tell me the truth. I was wrong. Nathan's face flushed. Jessica, please. I'm not finished, I said firmly. You've had 2 years to speak your piece. I get my moment now. I turned to address our guests. Thank you all for coming to celebrate what I thought was a milestone. Instead, it's become a funeral for my marriage. That's a bit dramatic, Nathan muttered. Is it? I challenged. Tell me, Nathan, what part of bringing your mistress to our anniversary party isn't deserving of drama? Vanessa touched his arm. Maybe we should go. No, I said, suddenly filled with a strange clarity. You should stay. After all, this party is about Nathan's relationship, isn't it? Just not the one with me. I set the glass down carefully and straightened my spine. I won't be staying, though. I deserve better than this humiliation. With those words, I walked to the door, pausing only to address Nathan one final time. Don't come home tonight, or any night for that matter. Whatever we had died the moment you decided I wasn't worth the truth. As I stepped into the cool autumn air, I heard Diana call my name. I kept walking, the gravel crunching beneath my feet, each step taking me further from the life I thought I had. Behind me, through the cabin windows, I could see the tableau I'd left behind. Frozen faces, Nathan standing with his mistress, and a dozen handmade anniversary plates that would never be used. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years crafting the perfect vessels to hold our memories, never realizing our relationship had been hollow from the start. I drove aimlessly that night, Portland's rain-slicked streets reflecting traffic lights in blurry halos. My hands gripped the steering, wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, as if holding on might keep me from falling apart completely. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Zoe's apartment building, unable to face our empty house. You can stay as long as you need, Zoe said, making up her sofa with sheets and blankets. Her small apartment was cluttered with art supplies and half-finished canvases, but it felt safe in a way my own home suddenly didn't. I don't even know what to feel, I admitted, curling into the corner of the sofa. Angry? Devastated? Stupid? You're not stupid, Zoe insisted, handing me a mug of tea spiked with something stronger. Nathan is the one who threw away 12 years for some office fling. 2 years isn't a fling, I said quietly. That's a relationship. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from Nathan, calls from Diana and Marcus, messages from concerned friends. I silenced it, unable to face any of them. That first night passed in a blur of tears and numbness. Morning brought no clarity, only the harsh reality that I needed to return home eventually. I couldn't hide at Zoe's forever. "I'll come with you," Zoe offered, but I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. The house looked exactly as I'd left it yesterday morning. Coffee mug in the sink, pottery sketches spread across. The dining table, a half-read book on the arm of the sofa. How could everything appear so normal when nothing would ever be the same? I moved through the rooms like a ghost, seeing our life together with new eyes. Photos that once brought comfort now raised questions. Was he already with her when this was taken? The anniversary trip to Vancouver? His birthday celebration last year? In our home office, I started gathering important documents: birth certificate, passport, insurance policies. That's when I noticed the financial statements in Nathan's desk. As a financial advisor, Nathan had always handled our money. I'd trusted him completely, focusing on my teaching and art while he managed our investments and accounts. I started going through the papers methodically, trying to understand our financial situation. What I found made my stomach turn. Our joint savings account, the one we'd been building for years, had been steadily diminishing over the past 18 months. Monthly withdrawals, always in cash, totaling nearly $50,000. More concerning were the documents about our home, the refinancing papers I didn't remember signing. A home equity line of credit opened 6 months ago with a significant withdrawal. My hands trembled as I dialed Diana's number. "Jessica, thank God," she answered immediately. "We've been so worried. Are you okay?" "Where are you?" "I'm home," I said, my voice tight. "Diana, I need help. Nathan's been moving money around, taking out loans against the house. I don't understand what I'm looking at." "Don't touch anything else," she said firmly. "Marcus and I are coming over." Within an hour, they arrived with boxes of pizza I couldn't eat and a determination to help that broke through my numbness. Marcus, who had worked in banking before retirement, pored over the documents while Diana made calls to her friend Olivia Santos, a divorce attorney. "Jessica," Marcus said finally, his expression grave, "there's something you need to see." He showed me paperwork for an investment property purchased 14 months ago, a downtown condo in a luxury building. The down payment had come from our joint savings. The mortgage payments were being made from our home equity line. "He bought her an apartment," I whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "With our money." "It looks that way," Marcus confirmed gently. "And there's more. These credit card statements. There are charges for jewelry, weekend trips, dining at restaurants I know you've never mentioned." Diana's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. "Olivia can see you tomorrow morning. She specializes in cases like this." "Cases like what?" I asked hollowly. "Financial infidelity alongside the other kind," she replied. "She'll help you protect what's yours." That night, after Diana and Marcus reluctantly left, promising to return in the morning, my phone rang with a call from Nathan. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Where are you?" I demanded without preamble. "Jessica, we need to talk," he said, ignoring my question. "What happened last night? It wasn't supposed to go that way." "No kidding," I said bitterly. "How exactly was it supposed to go? After the party? After my exhibition? When, Nathan?" He sighed heavily. "Can I come home so we can discuss this civilly?" "This isn't your home anymore," I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "And while we're discussing things civilly, perhaps you can explain the downtown condo you purchased for your girlfriend with our money." The silence that followed told me everything. "Jessica," he started, his voice taking on the placating tone he used with difficult clients. "Our finances are complicated. You've never been interested in the details." "I'm interested now," I countered. "I'm interested in how you used our home as collateral to fund your affair. I'm interested in the $50,000 you took from our savings. I'm very interested in all of it, Nathan." "You're overreacting," he said dismissively. "The condo is an investment. Yes, Vanessa lives there, but it's in my name. It's an asset." "An asset?" I repeated incredulously. "You stole from our future to build one with her." "I didn't steal anything," he snapped, his composure slipping. "My name is on those accounts too. My salary paid for most of it anyway." The casual cruelty of his words stunned me into silence. In 12 years of marriage, he had never thrown our income disparity in my face. My teaching salary was modest compared to his earnings as a financial advisor, but we had always viewed our contributions as equal, my work allowing him to build his career without worrying about maintaining our home, his income providing financial security while I pursued my art. "I see," I said finally, my voice cold. "Well, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. Don't come to the house, Nathan. I've changed the locks." I hadn't actually changed the locks yet, but the bluff worked. He cursed under his breath. "This doesn't have to get ugly, Jessica." "It got ugly the moment you decided to cheat," I replied, ending the call. The next morning, I met Olivia Santos in her downtown office, armed with folders of documents and a determination I hadn't felt since the night of the party. Diana came with me, her presence a steady anchor in the storm. Olivia, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner, listened carefully as I explained the situation. She took notes, occasionally asking for clarification about specific accounts or assets. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she said when I finished. "What your husband has done, using marital assets to fund his affair and establish a separate household, is what we call marital waste. It's actionable in divorce proceedings." "I want everything documented," I said firmly. "Every penny he spent on her. The condo, the trips, all of it." "That's exactly what we'll do," Olivia nodded approvingly. "But there's something else we need to discuss." She pulled out a form from her desk. "Your exhibition at the riverfront gallery. It's a significant opportunity, correct?" I nodded, confused by the change in subject. "It's my first solo show." "Why?" "Because timing matters in these cases," she explained. "Oregon is an equitable distribution state, which means the court will divide marital assets fairly, not necessarily equally, considering various factors, including career opportunities." "I don't understand," I admitted. "If we file immediately, your exhibition becomes part of the marital assets under consideration. Potential income, professional advancement, everything you might gain from it. But if we gather evidence quietly and file after the exhibition..." She let the implication hang. "It would be mine alone," I finished. "My achievement, my opportunity." "Precisely," Olivia smiled. "And given what we've discovered about your husband's financial activities, I suggest we take our time building the strongest possible case." As we left Olivia's office, armed with a strategy and a list of documents to gather, Diana hugged me tightly. "You're stronger than you know, Jessica," she said. "Nathan underestimated you. That's his second mistake." "What was his first?" I asked. "Thinking he deserved you in the first place," she replied. That afternoon, I returned home to find a sleek black BMW parked in my driveway. Vanessa sat on my porch steps, looking considerably less polished than she had at the party. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, not bothering to hide my anger. She stood, brushing off her jeans. "I need to talk to you about Nathan." "I have nothing to say to you," I replied, moving to unlock my front door. "He's not who you think he is," she said quickly. "He's not who I thought he was either." Something in her voice, a note of fear perhaps, made me pause. "You have 5 minutes," I said, reluctantly gesturing toward the porch swing rather than inviting her inside. Some boundaries couldn't be crossed. Vanessa sat gingerly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Nathan told me you were separated," she began. "When we met 2 years ago, he said you were living together but essentially divorced, staying together for appearances while leading separate lives." I laughed bitterly. "And you believed that? The oldest cliché in the book?" She flushed. I was 25, new to the firm, and he was my mentor. He was charming and attentive and made me feel special. She looked away. By the time I realized things weren't exactly as he'd described, I was already in love with him. "So what? Changed?" I asked. "Why show up at our anniversary party?" "He kept promising we'd go public once certain things were resolved. The party was my idea. I thought if we faced you together, he'd finally stop making excuses." She paused. "I didn't know it was your anniversary. He told me it was just a casual gathering at his friend's cabin." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "You expect me to believe you didn't know?" "I didn't know a lot of things," she said quietly. "Like the fact that he used my apartment as a tax write-off. Or that the jewelry he gave me came from your joint accounts." My suspicions sharpened. "Why are you telling me this?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "Because yesterday, after the disaster at the cabin, I started asking questions. I went to the office and looked up some files." She handed me the folder. "Nathan's been moving client funds around. Small amounts from different accounts, spread out over time. I think he's been embezzling." I stared at the papers, my mind racing. "You're his mistress. Why would you turn on him like this?" "Because I realized he's been using both of us," she said simply. "And because whatever I did to you, however wrong it was to get involved with him, I'm not going to be complicit in stealing from innocent people." I took the folder, not quite sure what to believe. "I need to have my lawyer." "Look at this." Vanessa nodded, standing to leave. "That's fair. For what it's worth, Jessica. I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for not asking more questions sooner. You didn't deserve any of this." As she walked to her car, I called after her. "Why, did you come to me instead of going to the police?" She turned, her expression troubled. "Because Nathan told me something once that scared me. About what happened to the last person at the firm who accused someone of financial impropriety." She didn't elaborate further, simply got into her car and drove away. That night, I spread the documents from Vanessa across my dining table alongside the ones I'd found in Nathan's desk. The picture they painted was disturbing, not just a cheating husband, but potentially a criminal one. My phone lit up with a text from Nathan. "We need to talk. I know Vanessa came to see you. Don't believe her lies." I didn't respond, instead calling Olivia to arrange an emergency meeting for the following morning. Whatever Nathan had done, to me, to his clients, perhaps to others, it was worse than I had imagined. The betrayal extended far beyond our marriage, and I was only beginning to uncover its depths. As I gathered the papers into organized piles, I felt a strange calm replace the shock and hurt. Each document, each deception revealed, was another thread cutting me free from the man I thought I knew. The pain was still there, but alongside it grew something new, a determination to uncover the full truth, whatever it might be. The man I married had disappeared long ago, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. But in his absence, I was discovering something unexpected. The woman I had always been, strong enough to face whatever came next. The gallery space of the riverfront felt different in the harsh morning light, stripped of the mystique it held. In my dreams, Amelia, the curator who had championed my work, greeted me with an enthusiastic hug that I struggled to return. "Jessica, I was just about to call you. I've been thinking about placement for your pieces, and I'm envisioning the central alcove for your Marriage Vessels series. The irony wasn't lost on me. The collection she referenced, 12 interconnected pottery pieces representing the evolution of a relationship, had been the centerpiece of my portfolio. Each vessel grew from the last, their forms intertwining in increasingly complex patterns, culminating in a structure both strong and delicate. About that, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to make some changes to the exhibition. Amelia's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Changes? The opening is in 3 weeks. We've already designed the promotional materials. I know, I said, reaching into my bag for a sketchbook. But I can't show the Marriage Vessels series. Not anymore. I opened to fresh sketches I'd worked on through the sleepless night. I want to create something new, something more honest. She studied the charcoal drawings, shattered forms being reconstructed into unexpected shapes, broken edges highlighted with metallic glazes rather than hidden. This is different from your previous work, more raw. My life is different now, I replied simply. To her credit, Amelia didn't press for details. Instead, she traced the lines of my sketches with an appraising eye. You'd need to produce all of these in 3 weeks? I'll work day and night if necessary. She was quiet for a long moment. The marriage vessels were beautiful, Jessica, but these... She tapped the sketch. These have something the others didn't. Urgency. Truth. She nodded decisively. Do it. Create these instead. I left the gallery with a renewed sense of purpose. My exhibition wouldn't be what I'd planned. A celebration of marriage and connection. But something deeper had taken its place. A documentation of fracture and reconstruction. My next stop was Gregory Wilson's office. As managing partner at Nathan's firm, he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to power. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced, as he welcomed me into his corner office overlooking the river. Jessica, what a pleasant surprise. Nathan didn't mention you'd be stopping by. Nathan doesn't know I'm here, I replied, placing Vanessa's folder on his desk. And I'd prefer to keep it that way. Gregory's eyebrows rose slightly, but he gestured for me to continue. I recently became aware of some concerning activities involving client accounts, I said carefully. Patterns that might indicate improper management of funds. His smile remained fixed, but a wariness entered his eyes. That's a serious allegation. May I ask where you obtained this information? From someone inside the firm who was troubled by what they discovered. I didn't mention Vanessa by name. Whatever her role in destroying my marriage, her career didn't need to be collateral damage. Gregory opened the folder, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. His expression revealed nothing, but the slight tightening of his jaw told me what I needed to know. I see, he said finally, closing the folder. And you've brought this directly to me rather than to the authorities because I thought you deserved the opportunity to address it internally first, I replied, and because I'm hoping for honesty in return. Honesty about what, exactly? About whether Nathan is the only one involved, or if this goes deeper. Gregory leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. You're not what I expected, Jessica. Nathan always described you as what? Let's just say, he emphasized your artistic temperament over your analytical abilities. I smiled thinly. Being underestimated has its advantages. He nodded slowly. Indeed, it does. He tapped the folder. These discrepancies are concerning, but without context, they could have innocent explanations. Or they could be evidence of systematic theft, I countered. Either way, don't you think they warrant investigation? Of course, he agreed smoothly. Rest assured, I'll look into this thoroughly. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing, Mr. Wilson. I'd appreciate your discretion in this matter. My husband and I are currently reassessing our relationship. His expression softened with understanding. I had heard rumors. I'm sorry. Don't be, I replied. Some endings are necessary for new beginnings. As I turned to go, he called after me. Jessica? For what it's worth, I've always thought Nathan didn't appreciate what he had. I nodded wordlessly and left, unsure whether to trust his apparent sincerity. But I'd accomplished what I came for, planting the seed of doubt about Nathan's activities. The next phase of my strategy unfolded at Harborside, the upscale restaurant known for its legendary Sunday brunch. Olivia had suggested the meeting, arguing that neutral territory would keep emotions in check. I arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of the entrance. Nathan arrived precisely on time, alone and impeccably dressed as always. I'd half expected Vanessa to accompany him, but perhaps he'd learned something from the anniversary party debacle. Jessica, he greeted me, voice carefully modulated to convey both concern and authority. You're looking well. I gestured for him to sit. Thank you for coming. Of course, he replied, unfolding his napkin with practiced precision. Though I wish you'd been willing to talk at home. We don't have a home anymore, Nathan. We have a house with a mortgage that's mysteriously larger than it was 6 months ago. He sighed dramatically. I see Olivia has been filling your head with financial concerns. I've told you, the refinancing was a strategic decision to take advantage of lower interest rates. And the home equity line of credit? I asked. Was that also strategic? Market opportunities arise unexpectedly. Sometimes quick access to capital is necessary. Like when you need to buy a condo for your girlfriend? The waiter approached with water and menus, interrupting Nathan's response. We ordered mechanically. Him, the smoked salmon Benedict he always chose. Me, a simple avocado toast I doubted. I'd touch. I didn't invite you here to argue about the condo, I said once we were alone again. Then why am I here, Jessica? To receive more accusations? To be ambushed again? You're here because, despite everything, I thought you deserved to hear this directly from me. I leaned forward. I know about the client accounts, Nathan. The change was subtle but unmistakable. A momentary widening of his eyes, a tightening of his fingers around his water glass. Then the mask slipped back into place. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence, I said quietly. Not anymore. I've seen the documentation. Small transfers, spread across multiple accounts over time. Carefully. Done. But not careful enough. He set down his glass with deliberate control. Whatever you think you found, you're misinterpreting it. Financial management is complex, Jessica. It's why you've always left it to me. I've already taken what I found to Gregory Wilson. That hit its mark. Nathan's composure faltered visibly. You went to Gregory without discussing it with me first? Just like you decided to refinance our house without discussing it with me first, I countered. Or open credit accounts in my name. Or empty our savings. This is different, he hissed, leaning across the table. You have no idea what you've done. I think I do, I replied calmly. I've finally stopped being the trusting, naive wife who looks the other way while you destroy our lives. Our food arrived, creating another artificial pause in the conversation. Nathan stared at his plate, appetite apparently gone. What do you want? He asked finally. Divorce papers have been filed, I said. They'll be delivered to your office tomorrow. I'm keeping the house. All of it, not just my half. You'll transfer the condo to me as well, as partial restitution for the marital assets you misappropriated. He laughed incredulously. You can't be serious. No judge would. A judge might not, I agreed, if we go to court. But we're not going to court, Nathan. Because if we do, the documentation about those client accounts becomes public record. The color drained from his face. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. I corrected. A clean, private divorce where you surrender the properties and pay restitution, or a messy public one where your professional misconduct becomes central to the proceedings. This isn't you, Jessica, he said, studying me with genuine confusion. You don't play these kinds of games. You're right. It isn't me, or at least it wasn't. But you and Vanessa have been excellent teachers. At the mention of her name, Nathan's expression darkened. Vanessa brought you those documents, didn't she? She's trying to play both sides. She's trying to do the right thing, I replied. Something you might want to consider. The right thing? He leaned forward, voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Do you have any idea what Gregory Wilson is capable of? Why do you think his last partner retired suddenly at 45 and moved to New Zealand? Why the compliance officer before Vanessa quit without notice? A chill ran through me. Are you saying Gregory is involved? I'm saying be careful who you trust, Nathan warned. This goes deeper than you realize. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across our table. We looked up to find Vanessa standing there, her face tense. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, glancing nervously between us. But we need to talk. All of us. Now. Nathan started to object, but Vanessa cut him off. Gregory called an emergency partners meeting for tomorrow morning. He mentioned a review of account management protocols and special attention to the Hoffman portfolio. Nathan's face went ashen. The Hoffman account was the largest one I'd adjusted. I know, Vanessa said grimly. And so does Gregory, thanks to the documents I stupidly highlighted for him. I looked between them, realization dawning. Gregory isn't investigating the discrepancies, he's covering them up. While setting me up to take the fall, Nathan added bitterly. Our unlikely trio moved to Vanessa's car in the parking lot, the restaurant suddenly feeling too public for this conversation. I should have seen this coming, Nathan said, loosening his tie. Gregory's been moving me onto all the troubled accounts for months, positioning me. As what? The fall guy? I asked. Exactly, Vanessa nodded. Nathan's fingerprints are all over the problematic transfers, while Gregory's are nowhere to be found. Even though he directed most of them, Nathan added. I processed this new information. So you were embezzling, but under Gregory's instructions. Nathan at least had the grace to look ashamed. It started small, adjustments to improve quarterly reports. Then it escalated. By the time I realized how deep it went, I was already implicated. And the affair? Was that Gregory's idea too? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Vanessa looked away. Nathan stared at his hands. No, he admitted quietly. That was my weakness, my failure. An uncomfortable silence filled the car. Whatever their relationship had been, watching. It crumble under pressure brought me no satisfaction. What happens at tomorrow's meeting? I asked finally. Gregory presents evidence of irregularities in accounts I've managed, Nathan explained. Expresses shock and disappointment. Promises clients that the firm will make everything right. While you take the blame, I finished. And possibly criminal charges, he added grimly. I considered our options. The divorce leverage I'd thought. I had suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the larger crisis unfolding. We need proof that Gregory was behind this, I said. Something that connects him directly to the transfers. Vanessa straightened in her seat. The authorization codes. Every major transfer requires a partner code, even if someone else executes it. Those would be in the system logs, Nathan nodded, but we'd need admin access. Which you don't have, I guessed. No, but Vanessa hesitated. Rachel in IT does, and she owes me a favor. A plan began to form, tentative at first, then more concrete as we worked through the details. By the time we left the restaurant parking lot, our unlikely alliance had a strategy. This doesn't change anything between us, I told Nathan as we parted ways. Our marriage is over. I know, he said softly. But thank you for helping despite everything. I'm not doing it for you, I clarified. I'm doing it because it's right, and because I've spent too many years letting others determine my worth. As I drove home, I reflected on the strange turn events had taken. 2 weeks ago, I'd been preparing for an anniversary celebration, blissfully unaware that my marriage was a facade. Now, I was plotting to expose financial fraud with the help of my husband and his mistress. Life, it seemed, had a sense of irony after all. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. Vanessa worked with her IT contact to access the system logs. Nathan gathered supporting documentation from his own files, emails and memos that, while not smoking guns, created a pattern when viewed together. While they worked on the financial evidence, I focused on creating a different kind of record. I reached out to former employees who had left the firm under questionable circumstances. Most refused to talk, but a few shared stories that corroborated Nathan's claims about Gregory's methods. The former compliance officer, now living in Auckland, was particularly forthcoming once I explained the situation. Gregory threatened my family, she told me during our video call. Said he knew people who could make problems for my daughter at college. I left the country the next day. I recorded our conversation with her permission, adding it to our growing arsenal. By evening, we had assembled enough evidence to at least raise serious questions about Gregory's conduct. It might not be enough for criminal charges, but it would certainly prevent him from making Nathan the sole scapegoat. The three of us met at Zoe's apartment to finalize our approach. My friend had reluctantly agreed to let us use her place as neutral territory, though she made her feelings about Nathan abundantly clear with glacial stares and pointed silence. The partners' meeting is at 8 a.m., Vanessa confirmed, organizing printouts on Zoe's coffee table. Gregory always arrives by 7:30 to prepare, so we intercept him before the meeting, Nathan concluded. Present what we have and negotiate. I shook my head. No, we don't give him the chance to destroy evidence or create a counter-narrative. We bring this to all the partners simultaneously. Vanessa looked uncertain. Gregory is very convincing. He could turn this around, make it seem like we're conspiring against him. That's why we need leverage he can't fight, I insisted. Something irrefutable. Nathan's phone chimed with a text. He read it, then looked up with grim satisfaction. Rachel came through. She found the authorization logs and matched them with the transfers. Gregory's code was used for every major movement of funds. Would he have been the only one who knew his code? I asked. In theory, yes, Vanessa replied, but he could claim it was stolen or misused. Not if we can prove he entered it himself, Nathan said, showing us the text. The system logs IP addresses with each authorization. Most of the questionable transfers were authorized from Gregory's home network. A slow smile spread across my face. That's our smoking gun. As we finalized our strategy for the morning, I found myself studying Nathan and Vanessa together. The dynamic between them had shifted. The romantic connection replaced by wary collaboration. Whatever passion had fueled their affair seemed to have burned out under the pressure of real-world consequences. Later, as Nathan and Vanessa left separately to prepare for tomorrow, Zoe finally spoke her mind. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, helping me gather the scattered papers. "Working with them after what they did to you?" "I'm not doing it for them," I replied, echoing what I'd told Nathan earlier. "This is about doing what's right, regardless of my personal feelings. And the fact that it might take down the man who enabled your husband's affair has nothing to do with it." Zoe raised an eyebrow. I smiled reluctantly. Maybe a little. But mostly, it's about refusing to be a victim anymore, not of Nathan's betrayal or Gregory's manipulation. Zoe hugged me tightly. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. The old Jessica would have retreated into her art and let the world sort itself out." The old Jessica didn't know her own strength, I replied. That night, I returned to my studio for the first time since the anniversary party. The half-finished pieces of my marriage vessels collection sat abandoned on shelves, their interconnected forms now seeming naive rather than profound. I sat at my wheel and centered a fresh lump of clay, feeling its weight and resistance as it spun between my hands. As I worked deep into the night, new forms emerged, jagged edges softened but not hidden, broken pieces incorporated into designs stronger than the originals. By dawn, I had created the first pieces of my new collection. I called it After the Breaking. The morning of the partners' meeting dawned with a heavy Portland mist that shrouded the city in gray. I dressed carefully, choosing a structured navy dress that conveyed confidence, rather than the artistic flowing garments I typically favored. My hands, still bearing traces of clay under the nails despite scrubbing, felt strange gripping the leather portfolio containing our evidence. Nathan met me in the lobby of his firm's building, his face drawn from what had clearly been a sleepless night. "Vanessa's already upstairs," he said in greeting. "She's making sure everyone attends." We rode the elevator in silence, the tension between us no longer hot with betrayal, but cooled into something more complex, a shared purpose despite our fractured connection. The conference room occupied the corner of the 15th floor, its glass walls offering panoramic views of the mist-covered city and river beyond. Inside, partners and senior associates milled around a breakfast spread, coffee cups in hand. Gregory stood at the head of the table, reviewing notes with practiced nonchalance. He glanced up as we entered, his expression flickering with momentary surprise before settling into a practiced smile. "Jessica, this is unexpected. I don't believe we included spouses in the meeting invitation." "I invited her," Nathan replied before I could speak. "Given that today's discussion directly impacts our family's financial future." Gregory's smile tightened. "I see. Well, perhaps we should discuss that privately before—" "Actually," I interrupted smoothly, "I think what we have to discuss concerns everyone in this room." I gestured to the gathered partners, who were watching our exchange with undisguised curiosity. Gregory's eyes narrowed slightly. "The agenda is rather full today. Perhaps another time would be more appropriate. For personal matters." "This isn't personal," Vanessa said, stepping forward with a stack of folders. "It's professional." She began distributing them around the table. "Everyone should have a copy before we begin." Gregory's composure slipped fractionally. "Ms. Collins, this is highly irregular. We have established protocols for adding items to meeting agendas." "Like the protocols for transferring client funds?" Nathan asked pointedly. "Those seem to have been rather flexible lately." A tense silence fell over the room as partners opened their folders. I watched their expressions shift from confusion to concern to alarm as they reviewed the evidence we'd compiled. "What is this?" demanded Elaine Chen, the most senior female partner. "These authorization logs show questionable transfers from dozens of client accounts." "All approved with Gregory's authorization code," Nathan added. "From his home IP address." Gregory's face hardened. "This is absurd. Nathan has clearly manufactured this evidence to deflect from his own mismanagement. As I was prepared to outline today, we've discovered concerning irregularities in accounts under his supervision. We thought you might say that," I said calmly, opening my own folder. "Which is why we also have statements from former employees about your methods." I slid copies of the transcripts across the table, including Margot Lewis, your former compliance officer, who has quite a story about why she suddenly relocated to New Zealand. The partners exchanged alarmed glances. Gregory's face flushed with anger. "This is a coordinated attack on my reputation," he declared. "Nathan has been embezzling from client accounts for months. I was building a case before bringing it to the partnership. These fabricated logs and coerced statements are a desperate attempt to save himself." "If they're fabricated, You won't mind if we bring in an independent forensic accountant to verify them, Vanessa suggested. I've taken the liberty of contacting Margaret Wu at Deloitte. She's on standby for our call. For the first time, uncertainty flashed in Gregory's eyes. He glanced around the table, assessing his support among the partners. This is completely unnecessary, he insisted. We can resolve this internally without outside involvement that might alarm our clients. I agree that client confidence is paramount, said Howard Jenkins, the oldest partner. Which is precisely why we need to understand exactly what's happened here. He turned to Nathan. You're admitting to involvement in these transfers? Nathan nodded grimly. Yes, I executed many of them under Gregory's direction. I'm not claiming innocence. I'm guilty of following orders I knew were wrong. But I wasn't acting alone, and I wasn't the architect of this system. The meeting devolved into intense questioning from all sides. Partners demanded explanations, timelines, and assessments of potential liability. Through it all, Gregory maintained his denial, though his arguments grew increasingly desperate as more details emerged. I watched silently, observing the power dynamics shift minute by minute. Nathan answered questions directly, accepting responsibility for his actions while consistently returning focus to the broader systemic issues. Vanessa provided technical details about how the transfers had been executed and documented. Just as it seemed the tide was turning decisively against Gregory, the conference room door opened. A security guard entered, followed by two men in suits who introduced themselves as agents from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. We received an anonymous tip regarding potential securities fraud at this firm, the older agent explained. We have a warrant to secure all records related to client accounts managed by Nathan Parker. The room fell silent. Gregory's expression transformed from cornered to triumphant in an instant. As I was trying to explain to my colleagues, he said smoothly, Mr. Parker has been engaging in concerning activities. We were just discussing the firm's response. I felt the situation slipping away. Gregory had called in authorities focused specifically on Nathan, effectively derailing our revelation about his own involvement. That's not the complete picture, I began, but the agent held up his hand. Ma'am, this is now an official investigation. All evidence should be provided through proper channels. Gregory smiled thinly. Of course, the firm will cooperate fully. In fact, I've prepared a preliminary report on the accounts in question. He retrieved a bound document from his briefcase, clearly prepared in advance for exactly this scenario. Vanessa caught my eye across the table, her expression conveying what we both realized. Gregory had anticipated our move and countered with one of his own. By bringing in regulators focused narrowly on Nathan, he was reasserting control of the narrative. The next hour passed in a blur of procedural discussions. The agent sequestered Nathan for preliminary questioning while instructing the firm to preserve all records. Partners huddled in concerned groups, discussions of damage control already beginning. I found myself standing alone by the windows, watching the morning mist burn away to reveal the city below. All our careful preparation, all the evidence we'd gathered, it had been neutralized by Gregory's preemptive strike. Impressive move, Vanessa said quietly, joining me at the window. He must have called them last night after seeing you at his office. He's using Nathan as a firewall, I murmured, containing the damage. What do we do now? Before I could answer, Elaine Chen approached us, her expression unreadable. Jessica, may I speak with you privately? I followed her to a small side office, unsure what to expect. Elaine had been with the firm for 20 years, a pioneering female presence in what had long been a male-dominated environment. I've known Gregory Wilson for 15 years, she began without preamble. He recruited me from a competitor, doubled my salary, made me the first female partner. She paused, studying me with shrewd eyes. I've also watched him systematically undermine anyone he views as a threat. Like Nathan? I asked. She shook her head. Nathan was never a threat to Gregory. He was useful, talented, but pliable. Her gaze sharpened. You, however, are something else entirely. I don't understand. Gregory has mentioned you occasionally over the years, always dismissively, the artistic wife, the teacher, the dreamer. But I've seen your work at charity auctions. There's nothing unfocused about your art, Jessica. It's precise, intentional, structured. She leaned forward. Gregory underestimated you. That's a mistake I won't make. What are you saying? I'm saying the evidence you gathered is compelling, but insufficient given Gregory's counter-move. We need someone with direct knowledge of his methods to come forward. She handed me a business card. Someone like Martin Delaney, Gregory's former assistant, who supervised document destruction when the SEC investigated the firm 3 years ago. I stared at the card. Why are you helping me? Elaine smiled thinly. Because I've spent 20 years watching men like Gregory and Nathan operate with impunity. Because this firm represents my life's work, and I won't see it destroyed by their arrogance. She stood to leave. And because sometimes justice requires a woman's touch. With that cryptic statement, she left me alone with the card and my thoughts. Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Nathan had emerged from his interview looking shell-shocked. The agents were boxing files and securing computers. Gregory moved among the partners, speaking in urgent, reassuring tones. I approached Nathan cautiously. What happened? They're focusing entirely on my activities, he said, voice hollow. The accounts I managed, the transfers I executed. It's exactly what Gregory wanted. We're not finished, I told him, showing him Martin Delaney's card. Elaine thinks he might help. Nathan's eyes widened slightly. Martin was Gregory's right hand for years. He knows everything. Where do we find him? Last I heard, he'd opened a sailing school in Astoria. A plan began forming, tentative at first, but gaining structure with each passing moment. Like clay on a wheel, possibilities taking shape beneath attentive hands. I need to go, I told Nathan. Keep the agents focused on the evidence we've already provided. Buy us time. He nodded, understanding. Jessica, thank you. You didn't have to help me after what I did. I'm not doing it for you, I reminded him. I'm doing it because it's right. As I turned to leave, Gregory intercepted me near the door. Leaving so soon? The drama's just beginning. The smug satisfaction in his tone made my skin crawl. You think you've won? I think your husband made a series of unfortunate choices that will have serious consequences, he replied. The firm will survive this isolated incident, and life will go on. For you, perhaps, I said softly. But remember this moment. Gregory, remember how confident you felt. His smile faltered slightly. Is that a threat, Mrs. Parker? No, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. It's a promise. The drive to Astoria took nearly 2 hours, the coastal highway winding, through forests and alongside waterways. I'd called ahead using the number on Martin's card, leaving a vague message about Gregory Wilson and the firm. He'd called back within minutes, agreeing to meet at his sailing school. Martin Delaney was younger than I'd expected, early 40s, with weathered skin from years on the water and clear eyes that assessed me carefully as I explained the situation. Gregory's finally overreached, he said when I finished, gazing out at the Columbia River where it met the Pacific. I've been waiting for this day. Will you help us? I asked. He considered the question for a long moment. What Gregory did, to me, was personal. He took credit for my work, isolated me from clients, and when I threatened to expose his methods, he fabricated evidence of misconduct. His jaw tightened. I lost my career, my reputation, nearly my marriage. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Don't be. Leaving that world was the best thing that ever happened to me. See, he gestured to the sailing school, where students were preparing boats for afternoon lessons. I found my purpose here, but he turned back to me. Gregory Wilson deserves to face consequences for once in his privileged life. Over the next hour, Martin detailed Gregory's systematic abuse of his position, the pressure he placed on subordinates, the manipulation of records, the strategic elimination of anyone who questioned his methods. Most crucially, he had documented everything, maintaining a private record of transactions and communications that Gregory believed had been destroyed. "I kept copies," Martin explained, retrieving a waterproof case from a storage locker. "Insurance, I called it. Never thought I'd actually use it." The contents were damning. Memos with Gregory's signature directing questionable transactions, emails discussing how to circumvent compliance requirements, records of payments to regulatory officials. A complete paper trail of years of financial misconduct. This is more than enough to clear Nathan, I realized, reviewing the documents. Martin gave me a shrewd look. "Is that what you want? To save your husband?" I considered the question carefully. "I want the truth to come out, whatever that means for Nathan, for Gregory, for everyone involved." I met his gaze. Nathan made his choices. He'll have to face them. But he shouldn't be the only one. Martin nodded approvingly. "Then let's make sure everyone faces exactly what they deserve." We spent the afternoon organizing the evidence, creating a clear narrative that connected Gregory's directives to specific violations. By evening, we had compiled a comprehensive dossier that left no room for denial. "The regulators need to see this immediately," I said, checking the time. "They're probably still at the firm." Martin shook his head. "Not the local agents. They might already be compromised given how quickly Gregory got them involved. We need to go straight to the regional director." He made a call to a former colleague who now worked in regulatory compliance. Within an hour, we had secured a video meeting with the FINRA regional enforcement team. The presentation was straightforward. Martin walked through the evidence methodically, his industry knowledge adding credibility to each point. I provided context from the current situation, including Gregory's attempt to frame Nathan exclusively. The enforcement director, a no-nonsense woman named Teresa Fujimoto, listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When we finished, her team conferred briefly off-camera. "This is extremely serious," she said finally. "We'll dispatch a specialized team to secure additional evidence and expand the investigation to include Mr. Wilson and potentially other partners. In the meantime, Ms. Parker, please return to Portland. We'll need your formal statement, and your husband's as well." As we ended the call, I felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The wheels of justice were turning, but slowly. Gregory would have time to destroy evidence, pressure witnesses, perhaps even flee if he suspected what was coming. "What now?" I asked Martin. "Now we make sure Gregory doesn't slither away in the meantime," he replied grimly. We devised a two-pronged approach. Martin would deliver copies of key documents to several partners, including Elaine Chen, ensuring Gregory couldn't suppress the information internally. Meanwhile, I would return to Portland to coordinate with Nathan and Vanessa, keeping pressure on Gregory from within. As I prepared to leave, Martin offered a parting thought. "You know, Nathan doesn't deserve you. The way you fought for justice despite what he did to your marriage, that takes extraordinary strength." I smiled ruefully. "I'm not fighting for Nathan. I'm fighting for myself. For the woman who spent too many years being dismissed as just an artist, just a teacher, just a wife." I straightened my shoulders. "I'm fighting because I finally understand my own worth." The drive back to Portland seemed shorter somehow, purpose burning away fatigue. I arrived at the firm just as evening was falling, the office tower's windows illuminated against the darkening sky. The lobby security guard recognized me from morning. "Mrs. Parker," he greeted me. "Your husband left about an hour ago. Said something about meeting you at home." "Thank you," I replied. "Is Gregory Wilson still here?" "Yes, ma'am. Working. Late in his office." "Shall I tell him you're here?" "No," I said quickly. "I'll surprise him." I took the elevator to the executive floor, my heart pounding as the numbers climbed. The enforcement team wouldn't arrive until morning. Until then, we needed to ensure Gregory didn't destroy crucial evidence that might still be in his office. The floor was eerily quiet, most staff having departed for the day. Light spilled from Gregory's corner office, the only sign of life in the deserted space. I approached cautiously, rehearsing what I would say. But as I neared his door, voices from within stopped me. Gregory wasn't alone. Can't believe you would be this reckless," a woman's voice said. "Vanessa, the regulators are already suspicious. If they find this connection, they won't," Gregory interrupted. "The offshore accounts are untraceable. It's why we set them up in the first place." "But Nathan knows about them," Vanessa argued. "What if he talks to save himself?" "Nathan won't say anything," Gregory replied with cold confidence. "He's implicated himself too deeply. If he goes down, he takes you with him." I froze outside the door, processing what I was hearing. Vanessa wasn't confronting Gregory. She was conspiring with him. "I never wanted it to go this far," Vanessa said, her voice strained. "Using me to get close to Nathan was one thing, but framing him entirely—" "Having second thoughts?" Gregory's tone was mocking. "A bit late for that, don't you think? You've been cashing the checks for 2 years now." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Vanessa hadn't fallen in love with Nathan by chance. She'd been planted in his life, part of Gregory's scheme from the beginning. "His wife is becoming a problem," Gregory continued. "She's more resourceful than I anticipated." "Jessica's harmless," Vanessa replied dismissively. "An art teacher playing detective. The art teacher who tracked down Martin Delaney this afternoon." A sharp intake of breath from Vanessa. "How do you know that?" "I know everything that happens in my world," Gregory said. "Martin called an old colleague to arrange a meeting with FINRA. That colleague still owes me favors." My heart raced. Gregory knew about Martin's evidence. The carefully constructed case we'd built was already compromised. "What are you going to do?" Vanessa asked. "What I always do," Gregory replied calmly. "Eliminate the threat." I backed, away from the door, mind spinning. I needed to warn Martin, alert the authorities, tell Nathan that Vanessa had betrayed us all. But before I could move, the office door swung open. Gregory stood in the doorway, his surprise quickly masked by a predatory smile. "Jessica, what an unexpected pleasure." Vanessa appeared behind him, her expression flickering between shock and calculation. "I was just looking for Nathan," I lied, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Security said he might still be here." "Nathan left some time ago," Gregory replied, studying me intently. "But since you're here, perhaps we could continue our discussion from this morning. I believe we have unfinished business." Every instinct screamed danger, but I forced a neutral expression. "Another time, perhaps. I should get home. Nathan's waiting." I turned to leave, walking at a measured pace toward the elevator, resisting the urge to run. Behind me, I heard Gregory's voice, low and urgent. "Follow her. Make sure she goes directly home." The elevator doors seemed to take an eternity to open. Inside, I punched the lobby button repeatedly, relief washing over me as the doors finally closed. Pulling out my phone, I typed a frantic message to Martin. "Gregory knows. Evidence compromised. Be careful." The response came almost immediately. "Already delivered copies to partners and FINRA secure server. Too late for him to stop it." A small victory, but Gregory's words echoed ominously in my mind. Eliminate the threat. He wouldn't give up so easily. In the lobby, I spotted Vanessa emerging from another elevator, trying to appear casual as she scanned the space for me. I slipped out a side exit, taking the stairs to the parking garage instead of the main entrance where she would expect me. My car was where I'd left it that morning, but now I approached it with caution, checking underneath and examining the tires before unlocking it. Gregory's threat felt tangible, hovering in the air around me. I drove home via a circuitous route, constantly checking my rearview mirror for signs of being followed. Portland's evening traffic provided both cover and confusion, making it difficult to tell if the black sedan that appeared periodically was tracking me or simply heading in the same general direction. When I finally pulled into my driveway, Nathan's car was already there. The house lights were on, casting a deceptively welcoming glow. I sat in my car for a long moment, weighing my options. If Vanessa had been working with Gregory all along, where did that leave Nathan? Unwitting pawn or willing accomplice? There was only one way to find out. I entered the house cautiously, senses hyper-alert. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, a half-empty whiskey glass at his elbow. "You know," he said without looking up, a statement rather than a question. "About Vanessa working with Gregory? I just found out." I remained near the door, maintaining distance. "Were you part of it?" He looked up then, his face haggard. "Part of what? My own destruction? The deliberate sabotage of my career and marriage?" Bitterness edged his voice. "No, Jessica. I was exactly what they needed me to be. Ambitious enough to be useful, insecure enough to be manipulated." Something in his defeated posture spoke to the truth of his words. I moved closer, settling into the chair across from him. "Vanessa was never in love with you," I said gently. "No." He laughed hollowly. "Turns out I'm not even special enough to be betrayed on my own merits, just a stepping stone in Gregory's grand plan." "Why you? Why did he need to set you up?" Nathan took a long swallow of whiskey. "Because I was getting too close to the truth. About 2 years ago, I noticed discrepancies in some of our major accounts. Nothing obvious. Gregory's too smart for that. But patterns that didn't add up. So he distracted you with Vanessa." "She was brilliant," Nathan admitted. "Sympathetic when I complained about work pressure. Impressed by my financial insights. Fascinated by the very details that had raised my suspicions." He shook his head ruefully. "While I was falling for her, she was gathering information for Gregory. What I knew, what I suspected, what evidence I might have." "And once she had secured your trust completely," I began. "She helped steer me into executing transactions that would later incriminate me," he finished. "All while Gregory siphoned millions into offshore accounts." The pieces were falling into place. Gregory's elaborate scheme to enrich himself while creating the perfect scapegoat in Nathan. "We need to go to the authorities immediately," I said. "Tell them everything before Gregory can spin this further." Nathan's expression darkened. "It's not that simple. Gregory's already laid groundwork with the regulators, painting me as the mastermind. It's my signature on the documents, my client relationships he exploited, without hard evidence connecting him directly." "Martin Delaney has that evidence," I interrupted. "Documentation of Gregory's directives going back years. He's already shared it with FINRA's regional office." Hope flickered briefly in Nathan's eyes, then dimmed. "Gregory mentioned Martin during my interview this morning. Called him a disgruntled ex-employee with a vendetta. He's already working to discredit him." "Then we need more," I said, determination hardening within me. "Something that even Gregory can't explain away." "Like what? Gregory's too careful to—" Nathan stopped abruptly, a realization dawning. "The Hoffman account. What about it?" "It's the largest one I managed. A family trust worth over $200 million. Gregory directed substantial funds from it to a holding company in the Cayman Islands. He leaned forward intently. But here's the thing. The transfer required three-factor authentication, including a physical key fob that generates security codes. Only Gregory and I have access to those fobs. So the system would have a record of which fob was used, I concluded. Exactly. And the physical security logs would show who accessed the fob storage safe on the days of those transfers. A plan was taking shape, but its execution would be dangerous. Gregory had already demonstrated his willingness to take extreme measures. We need to get back into the firm, I said. Tonight, before Gregory can destroy those records. Nathan glanced at his watch. The cleaning crew arrives at 9. The security systems recalibrate during their access period. There's a brief window when the secondary authentication measures are offline. How do you know that? I asked, surprised. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Vanessa mentioned it once, bragging about her security clearance. She didn't realize I was filing away the information. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa's manipulation had inadvertently given us a weapon to use against her and Gregory. We spent the next hour preparing meticulously. Nathan gathered his firm credentials and keycards. I changed into dark, nondescript clothing and comfortable shoes. We reviewed the building's layout, identifying security cameras and potential exit routes. As we worked, an odd sense of synchronicity developed between us. A remnant of our years together, when we'd functioned as true partners. It was bittersweet, this glimpse of what we'd once been, emerging now only in the wreckage of our marriage. At 8:45 p.m., we parked 3 blocks from the firm, approaching on foot to avoid the building's parking security cameras. Nathan's key card granted us access through a service entrance, typically used by maintenance staff. We have approximately 12 minutes during the security reset, he whispered as we slipped into a service stairwell. After that, any unauthorized access will trigger silent alarms. We moved efficiently through the deserted building, avoiding the main corridors where security cameras would be active even during the reset period. The records room was located on the secure executive floor, adjacent to the partner offices. "Wait," Nathan said as we reached the floor, pressing me back against the wall. Voices drifted from around the corner, the cleaning crew starting their nightly routine. We would need to time our approach carefully to avoid being seen. When the voices moved to the opposite end of the floor, we made our way quickly to the records room. Nathan's keycard beeped softly as the door unlocked. Inside, rows of filing cabinets and digital storage systems housed the firm's most sensitive information. A separate security panel controlled access to the high-value client section. The Hoffman records will be in the secure digital archive, Nathan explained, moving to a computer terminal. The authentication logs are maintained separately from the transaction records, part of the security system rather than the client database. He logged in smoothly, navigating through layers of digital security with practiced efficiency. I kept watch at the door, monitoring the movements of the cleaning crew through the narrow window. "Here," Nathan said suddenly, his voice tight with excitement. "The authentication logs for the Hoffman transfers." I joined him at the terminal, scanning the screen. Each major transfer was accompanied by a detailed security log, including the unique identifier of the authentication fob used. "Can you tell which fob authorized these transfers?" I asked. Nathan pointed to a code at the end of each entry. "This is the fob identifier. Gregory's ends in 027. Mine is 394. The evidence was unmistakable. Every questionable transfer had been authorized, with Gregory's fob, 0227. "We need to print this," I said. "And we need the physical access logs for the security safe where the fobs are stored." Nathan hesitated. "Printing will create a record of our access." "It doesn't matter. By the time Gregory discovers it, the evidence will already be with the authorities." He nodded, initiating the print sequence. While the documents were printing, he accessed another system, the physical security logs that tracked access to the firm's most sensitive areas. The fobs are kept in a biometric safe in Gregory's office, Nathan explained. Access requires his fingerprint. No one else can open it. The logs confirmed this. Only Gregory Wilson had accessed the safe on the dates of the questionable transfers. It was the definitive connection we needed, proof that Gregory himself had authorized the fraudulent movements of client funds. As the final documents printed, the lights in the records room suddenly dimmed, then brightened, a precursor to the security system reset. "Time's up," Nathan warned, gathering the printed evidence. "We need to move." We slipped out of the records room just as the main security systems came back online. The cleaning crew had progressed to the far end of the floor, leaving our path to the service stairs temporarily clear. We had nearly reached the stairwell when a voice behind us froze us in place. "Working late, Nathan? And with company, no, less." Gregory Wilson stood in the doorway of his office, his stance casual but his eyes sharp with suspicion. Beside him, Vanessa watched us with calculated wariness. "Just picking up some personal items," Nathan replied, subtly shifting to block Gregory's view of the documents in my hand. "At 9 in the evening? Through the service entrance?" Gregory's smile was cold. "You must be desperate indeed." "We know, Gregory," I said, stepping forward. "About the offshore accounts. About how you set up Nathan to take the fall. About everything." His expression remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Accusations without evidence are merely slander, Mrs. Parker. Something that could further damage your husband's already precarious position." "We have the evidence," Nathan countered. "The authentication logs from your personal fob. The security access records proving only you opened the safe on the days of the transfers." For the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered in Gregory's eyes. Then his composure returned, colder than before. "Fabricated records won't help you," he said dismissively. "The authorities already have my statement regarding your activities, Nathan. Your desperate attempt to implicate me will only add obstruction of justice to your charges." "It's over, Gregory," I insisted. "Martin Delaney's evidence is already with FINRA. These logs merely confirm what they already suspect." At the mention of Martin's name, Vanessa stepped forward. "You're bluffing. Martin's evidence was destroyed years ago." "You'd be surprised what people keep when their lives and reputations are destroyed," I replied, watching her confidence waver. Gregory assessed the situation with calculating eyes. "Even if you have these supposed logs, they won't leave this building. Security is quite thorough these days, especially regarding unauthorized document removal." As if on cue, the elevator chimed, and 2 security guards emerged. Gregory's smile widened fractionally. "Perfect timing, gentlemen. We appear to have a security breach. Mr. Parker and his wife have accessed confidential records without authorization. Please escort them to the security office while I contact the authorities." The guards advanced, their expressions professionally blank. Nathan and I exchanged quick glances. If we were detained, Gregory would have the opportunity to destroy the evidence we'd gathered. What happened next unfolded with surreal clarity. Nathan stepped forward, ostensibly to comply with the guards, then suddenly tossed the folder of documents toward me. As the papers scattered in the air, creating momentary confusion, he lunged toward the fire alarm on the nearby wall and pulled it. The piercing wail of the alarm filled the space, accompanied by flashing lights and the distant sound of emergency doors unlocking automatically. The building's fire protocol overriding security measures to ensure safe evacuation. "Go!" Nathan shouted over the alarm. "Get the evidence out!" I hesitated for only a second before dropping to gather the crucial documents. The security guards, momentarily disoriented by the alarm, moved to restrain Nathan. Gregory lunged toward me, his composed facade cracking to reveal naked desperation. "Stop her," he commanded, but it was too late. I had already slipped past him into the stairwell, clutching the evidence tightly. Behind me, I heard scuffling and shouting, but I didn't look back. The alarm had triggered an automatic notification to the fire department. Within minutes, the building would be swarming with emergency responders. I raced down the stairs, heart pounding in rhythm with my footsteps. 3 floors down, the door to the stairwell burst open, and Vanessa appeared, her face flushed with exertion. "Jessica, wait!" she called. "You don't understand what you're doing." I didn't slow down, continuing my descent. Vanessa pursued, her heels clacking loudly on the metal stairs. "Gregory will destroy you both," she warned, her voice echoing in the stairwell. "He has connections you can't imagine, people who can make you disappear." "Is that what happened to the compliance officer before you?" I called back. "The one who moved to New Zealand under mysterious circumstances." Her footsteps faltered momentarily. "That was different. She threatened to go public. You still have a chance to walk away from this." I stopped abruptly, turning to face her. Why would I walk away? So Nathan can take the fall for crimes he didn't mastermind? So Gregory can continue, stealing from clients who trust him? Vanessa's expression hardened. "You think this is about right and wrong? This is about survival. Gregory protected me when my former boss tried to assault me. He gave me opportunities no one else would. I owe him. And that justifies destroying my marriage? Setting up Nathan to take the blame for Gregory's crimes?" "Nathan was a willing participant," she countered. "He never questioned the transfers, never reported the irregularities. He chose his ambition over his integrity long before I entered. The picture." There was truth in her words, painful as it was to acknowledge. Nathan had made choices that led us here, choices driven by ambition, insecurity, and moral compromise. "You're right," I admitted. "Nathan isn't innocent. He'll face consequences for his actions." I held up the documents. "But so will Gregory. And so will you." Anger flashed in her eyes. "You self-righteous bitch. You have no idea what I've been through, what I've had to do to survive in this world." "I know enough," I replied quietly. "I know you used your body and your intelligence to further Gregory's schemes. I know you deliberately seduced a married man as part of your job, and I know you're still trying to protect the person who orchestrated all of it." Her composure cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "Give me the documents, Jessica. Please. If Gregory goes down, I go with him. Everything I've built will be destroyed." "You destroyed my life," I reminded her. "My marriage, my trust, my sense of security. All collateral damage in your grand scheme." For a moment, something like regret flickered across her face. It wasn't personal. It was to me. The sound of approaching sirens penetrated the stairwell. Time was running out. Vanessa made a sudden lunge for the documents, catching me off guard. We grappled briefly, papers scattering on the stairs between us. "Stop!" I gasped, struggling to maintain my grip on the core evidence. "This won't help you!" Vanessa pressed her advantage, using her height and desperation to wrench several pages from my hands. But as she turned to flee upstairs with her captured documents, the stairwell door below us burst open. Firefighters in full gear poured in, followed by police officers responding to the alarm. "What's going on here?" demanded one of the officers, taking in the scene. 2 women struggling on the stairs, scattered papers between them. "Financial fraud evidence," I said quickly, gathering the remaining documents. "This woman is trying to destroy evidence of crimes committed by Gregory Wilson, a partner at this firm." Vanessa froze, trapped between the approaching officers and the damning evidence in her hands. The fight seemed to drain from her all at once, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Ms. Collins?" One of the officers stepped forward. "We've been looking for you. We have some questions about offshore accounts linked to your name." The look she gave me then was complex. Anger, fear, and something that might have been reluctant respect. Without another word, She handed the documents she'd seized to the nearest officer. "I want immunity," she said quietly, "in exchange for everything I know about Gregory Wilson's operations." As the officers led Vanessa away, I leaned against the wall, the adrenaline that had fueled me suddenly evaporating. The documents I'd fought so hard to protect were now in official hands. Whatever happened next would be beyond my control. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed skin. Emergency vehicles lined the street, their lights painting the scene in surreal blues and reds. Employees evacuated from the building clustered on the sidewalk, watching with varying degrees of concern and curiosity. I spotted Nathan in handcuffs, being escorted to a police car. Our eyes met briefly across the distance. In that moment, the complexity of my feelings toward him crystallized. Anger at his betrayal, sadness for what we'd lost, and a strange, reluctant respect for his final act of sacrifice. As the car drove away, I felt a peculiar lightness. Not happiness exactly, but the unburdening that comes with truth finally exposed. Whatever the future held, it would be built on honesty rather than illusion. Diana found me there, standing amidst the chaos. She must have seen the news of the alarm on social media or heard from one of our mutual friends. Without a word, she wrapped me in a fierce hug that unleashed the tears I'd been holding back. "It's over," I whispered against her shoulder. "Everything's over." "No," she countered gently, pulling back to meet my eyes. "Everything's just beginning." 6 months passed like a fever dream, intense, disorienting, occasionally nightmarish, but ultimately cleansing. Spring had returned to Portland, cherry blossoms lining the streets like nature's own celebration of renewal. The legal aftermath of that night unfolded more dramatically than even I could have anticipated. Gregory Wilson faced multiple federal charges, from securities fraud to money laundering. The investigation expanded to include 2 other partners who had participated in his schemes. Nathan, despite his cooperation with authorities, received a 5-year sentence, reduced from the potential 15 to 20 he had initially faced. His willing participation in the fraud, even under Gregory's direction, couldn't be excused entirely. But his final act, triggering the alarm, creating the distraction that allowed the evidence to reach authorities, had earned him consideration. During sentencing, Vanessa negotiated a more complex deal. In exchange for comprehensive testimony about Gregory's operations, she received immunity for some charges and reduced sentences for others. She would serve 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by probation and community service. The firm itself didn't survive the scandal. Clients withdrew their assets en masse, employees scattered to competitors, and the once prestigious address now housed a tech startup with no connection to the financial industry. Through it all, I remained focused on 2 things: my exhibition at the Riverfront Gallery and rebuilding my life from the fragments that remained. The exhibition opened 3 weeks after that fateful night, though with a completely different collection than originally planned. After the breaking, featured 27 pieces that chronicled destruction and rebirth through broken pottery reconstructed with gold seams. The Japanese art of kintsugi applied to the narrative of my own life. Critics called it revelatory, and a masterclass in transforming pain into beauty. The Portland Tribune ran a feature on the exhibition, connecting it subtly to the financial scandal without explicitly mentioning my personal connection. 3 pieces sold on opening night, including the centerpiece installation that had once been my marriage vessels collection, now shattered and reformed into something both wounded and transcendent. The proceeds from those sales, combined with the eventual settlement from the firm's dissolution, allowed me to make the final mortgage payment on the house. It was mine now, truly mine, without Nathan's name on the deed or his presence in the rooms. I had considered selling it initially, finding somewhere untainted by memories of betrayal. But as weeks passed, I realized the house itself wasn't the problem. It was the narrative I attached to it. So instead of fleeing, I began the slow process of reclamation. Room by room, I transformed the space. The formal dining room where Nathan had held business dinners became my secondary studio, filled with light and creative possibility. The master bedroom suite was completely reimagined, walls painted a serene blue-gray, new furniture chosen for comfort rather than status. The kitchen, always more his domain than mine, now featured open shelving displaying my handmade ceramics. My art studio in the converted garage evolved as well. I installed better lighting, expanded the kiln area, and added a small gallery space where I could display works in progress. 3 days a week, I continued teaching at the high school, finding unexpected joy in sharing techniques with students who saw pottery as a way to express their own complex emotions. The other 4 days, I worked on commissioned pieces that had begun flowing in after the exhibition's success. What had once been a passionate hobby was evolving into a viable career, each creation bearing the subtle influence of my transformed perspective. It was on a bright April morning, cherry blossom petals drifting past my studio windows, that I received the letter. The return address showed the federal correctional institution where Nathan was serving his sentence. I held the envelope for a long moment, uncertain whether opening it would disrupt the hard-won peace I'd established. Eventually, curiosity overcame caution. Inside was a single page covered in Nathan's neat handwriting. "Jessica, I've started this letter 100 times over the past months, always falling short of finding the right words. What vocabulary exists for a man who betrayed his wife, his clients, his own integrity? What phrases could possibly convey the depth of my remorse? None, I've realized. No words will ever be adequate. So instead, I'll simply say this. I'm sorry. Not for getting caught, or for the consequences I now face, but for the pain I caused you, for betraying the trust you placed in me, for failing to be the man you deserved. The psychologist here says it's important to understand our motivations, to excavate the roots of our failures. I've spent months digging through the debris of my choices, and what I've found isn't flattering. Insecurity, ambition, a desperate need for validation that no external success could ever satisfy. None of that excuses what I did. But perhaps in understanding it, I can begin the long process of becoming someone different, someone better. I don't ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I don't expect reconciliation. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. I write only to acknowledge the harm I caused and to thank you for the strength you showed when everything fell apart. I hope you're well. I hope your exhibition was everything you dreamed it would be. I hope you're finding your way forward, unburdened by the weight of my failures. Be happy, Jessica. Create beautiful things. Live fully. With deep regret and enduring respect, Nathan, I read the letter twice, searching for manipulation or self-pity between the lines. Finding none, I folded it carefully and returned it to the envelope. Unlike the angry, desperate man who had been led away in handcuffs 6 months ago, the voice in this letter seemed genuinely reflective. Whether that reflection would lead to lasting change was impossible to know. What I did know was that his words, while acknowledged, no longer held power over my emotional state. I could read his apology without being thrown back into turmoil. I could wish him well on his journey toward redemption without feeling responsible for it. This, perhaps, was the true measure of my healing. I placed the letter in a box containing other artifacts from my former life. Wedding photos, anniversary cards, the key to our first apartment, a time capsule of a completed chapter, rather than an open wound requiring constant attention. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reflections. Outside stood Marcus and Diana, bearing flowers and a bottle of champagne. "We're not interrupting, are we?" Diana asked as I welcomed them inside. "Just finishing some studio work," I assured. "Hercule, what's the occasion?" Marcus grinned, brandishing the champagne. "You haven't checked your email today, have you?" I've been at the wheel since dawn. Why? Diana practically vibrated with excitement. The Portland Arts Council grant. Jessica, you got it. The news took a moment to register. I'd applied for the prestigious grant months ago, never truly expecting to receive it. The funding would allow me to expand my community arts program, teaching pottery to at-risk youth and seniors in assisted living facilities. How do you know before I do? I asked, stunned. Olivia is on the board, Diana explained, referring to her friend, the attorney. She couldn't contain herself when they made the decision this morning. The official notification is probably sitting in your inbox right now. Marcus was already opening the champagne, the cork popping with celebratory enthusiasm. To new beginnings, he toasted, handing me a glass, and to the strongest woman we know. As we clinked glasses in my sun-dappled kitchen, my kitchen, reclaimed and renewed. I reflected on the journey of the past year. From the devastating shock of betrayal to the arduous process of uncovering truth, from the collapse of one life to the construction of another, each step had contributed to the person I now was. I have news too, Diana said after we'd savored the first sips. The community college called. They want you to teach a special weekend course on therapeutic pottery techniques. 6 weeks, starting in June. I don't have formal training in art therapy, I pointed out. Diana smiled knowingly. They're not looking for credentials, Jessica. They're looking for someone who understands how creating art can help process trauma and build resilience. Someone exactly like you. The opportunity resonated with possibilities. A chance to share not just techniques, but the deeper lessons. I'd learned about transformation and renewal. I'll think about it, I promised, though we all knew I would accept. After Diana and Marcus left, I returned to my studio, drawn to the piece I'd been working on that morning. A large vessel with deliberate fractures running through its surface, each break highlighted with gold leaf. Unlike my earlier work in this style, these fractures didn't represent damage to be repaired, but integral design elements, planned disruptions that allowed light to enter in unexpected ways. As I carefully applied another layer of gold to the most prominent fissure, I considered the strange, non-linear path that had led me here. The anniversary party that had shattered my world had also, paradoxically, set me free. The betrayal that had broken my heart had ultimately revealed my strength. The ending of one story had enabled the beginning of another, more authentic one. My phone chimed with a text message. Zoe, checking if I was still joining her for dinner that evening. We had reservations at Harborside, the same restaurant where I'd confronted Nathan about his deception, now reclaimed as a place where friendship and laughter could flourish. Absolutely, I texted back, finishing up in the studio. Meet you there at 7. I returned to my work, hands steady as they traced gold along the vessel's intentional breaks. Outside, cherry blossoms continued their gentle descent. Nature's reminder that renewal follows release, that beauty emerges from cycles of ending and beginning. The woman I had become in the aftermath of betrayal was not the woman I had been. Before, not better or worse necessarily, but more authentically myself. More aware of both my vulnerability and my resilience. More committed to creating beauty from brokenness, both in clay and in life. The anniversary party that had changed everything was now simply part of my story, not the conclusion, but a pivotal moment in a continuing narrative. The mistress who had appeared that night, thinking to claim my husband and my dignity, had instead inadvertently set in motion events that would reveal my true capacity for growth and transformation. And my response, which had indeed left the room silent that night, had evolved into something far more powerful than words, a life rebuilt on my own terms, shaped by my own hands, fired in the kiln of adversity until it emerged both stronger and more beautiful than before. As evening light filtered through my studio windows, I placed the finished vessel on a shelf to dry, already envisioning the next piece in this evolving collection. Tomorrow would bring new clay, new challenges, new opportunities to create meaning from experience, and I was ready for all of it. 1 year after the exhibition that marked my professional rebirth, I found myself standing in front of a classroom at Willamette Valley Community College. 20 eager faces looked back at me, a diverse group ranging from college students to retirees, all drawn to my weekend course on therapeutic pottery techniques. Art isn't just about creating something beautiful, I told them, moving between the pottery wheels. It's about expressing what can't be articulated in words, about transforming raw material into meaning, about finding wholeness in the process of creation, even when life feels fragmented. A young woman in the front row, barely 20, with anxious eyes that reminded me of myself at that age, raised her hand. But what if you're not good at it? What if what you make is ugly? I smiled, remembering my own early struggles with clay. The therapeutic value isn't in the perfection of the final piece, but in the process itself. Some of my most meaningful work emerged from what I initially considered failures. As if to demonstrate, I pulled out a small bowl from my teaching collection. It was deliberately asymmetrical, with visible fingerprints along the rim and a crack running down one side, sealed with gold. This piece taught me more than any perfect vessel could have, I explained, passing it around. The Japanese call this technique kintsugi, highlighting breaks rather than hiding them, treating damage as part of an object's history rather than something to disguise. Like emotional scars, observed an older gentleman in the back, his weathered hands already stained with clay. Exactly, I nodded. We all carry breaks and repairs. The question is whether we try to hide them or incorporate them into our understanding of ourselves. The class settled into focused work after that, 20 pairs of hands finding their own relationship with the clay. I moved among them, offering guidance, making adjustments, encouraging exploration rather than perfection. Teaching had become an unexpected source of healing for me. Each student brought their own story to the clay: grief, anxiety, transition, celebration, and watching them work through those narratives in tangible form reminded me of art's power to transform experience into meaning. Professor Parker? I turned to find the young woman from the front row, Emma, struggling with her wheel. The clay had collapsed into an amorphous lump for perhaps the third time. I can't get it centered, she said, frustration evident in her voice. Every time I think I've got it, it wobbles out of control. I sat beside her, demonstrating the gentle but firm pressure needed. Centering is the foundation of everything that follows, I explained. It requires patience and presence. You can't rush it, and you can't be distracted by thoughts of the finished piece. Kind of like life, she observed wryly. Very much like life, I agreed, guiding her hands back to the clay. Try again. Focus on the connection between your hands and the material. Feel the subtle shifts. By the end of the 3-hour session, Emma had successfully centered her clay and created a small, wobbly bowl. It wasn't technically accomplished, but the pride in her eyes as she placed it on the drying rack spoke to something deeper than aesthetic achievement. Same time next Saturday? I reminded everyone as they packed up. And remember, practice during the week if you can. The relationship with clay builds through consistent engagement. As the classroom emptied, Diana appeared in the doorway, her presence a welcome surprise. Though we spoke regularly, her busy schedule as a hospital administrator meant our in-person visits had become less frequent. "Thought I'd surprise you?" she said, hugging me warmly. Marcus is at a fishing tournament with his buddies, and I was feeling restless at home. "Hope I'm not interrupting your cleanup." "Never," I assured her, grateful for the company. "Help me gather these tools, and then we can grab lunch. There's a new cafe just down the street that supposedly makes incredible lavender scones." We worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, wiping down wheels and organizing clay tools. Diana had become familiar with my teaching practice, occasionally sitting in on classes when her schedule permitted. "You're really good at this," she observed, watching me carefully wrap unfinished student pieces for storage. "Teaching, I mean. You have a way of seeing what each person needs." "It's just experience," I demurred. "I've made every possible mistake. With clay. Makes it easier to recognize the struggles in others." Diana shook her head. "It's more than that. You connect with people. Help them translate their emotions into something tangible. It's a gift, Jessica." Her words warmed me, not just for the compliment, but for the recognition of how far I'd come. A year and a half ago, I'd been defined primarily as Nathan's wife, my artistic practice relegated to hobby status. Now I moved between multiple professional identities: teacher, working artist, community program director, each role enriching the others. After securing the classroom, we walked the few blocks to Wildflower Cafe, a sunny space filled with local art and the scent of fresh-baked goods. The hostess seated us by a window overlooking a small courtyard garden. "So, Diana," said once we'd ordered, her tone shifting to something more careful. "I have news." Something in her expression made me set down my water glass. "Is it about Nathan?" She nodded, her eyes searching my face for signs of distress. "His parole hearing is next month. His lawyer thinks he'll be approved for early release, given his cooperation and model behavior." I absorbed this information, monitoring my internal response. There was a time when any mention of Nathan would trigger a cascade of anger and hurt. Now I felt a curious neutrality, neither joy nor anguish, simply acknowledgement of information that no longer held emotional power. "That's good for him," I said finally. "The early release, I mean." Diana studied me. "You're really okay with this? Him being out, possibly back in Portland?" "I've built a life that doesn't revolve around Nathan, his presence or absence," I replied. "Whether he's in federal prison or living across town doesn't change who I am now." A small smile played at the corners of Diana's mouth. "You continue to amaze me, you know that? After everything you went through." "Because of everything I went through," I corrected gently, not despite it. Our food arrived. Avocado toast with poached eggs for me, a mushroom quiche for Diana, momentarily pausing our conversation. As we ate, I considered what Nathan's return to society might mean practically. Would he stay in Portland, where his disgrace was public knowledge? Would he attempt to rebuild a career in finance, despite his felony conviction? Would he seek contact with me? "There's something else," Diana said, interrupting my thoughts. "He's written a book about the financial fraud, his involvement, the aftermath. It's being published next month." This news was more surprising. A book about... I hesitated, processing the implications. About us? Primarily about the firm, from what I understand? Gregory's schemes, the systematic corruption, how it all unraveled. But... She hesitated. "You're in it. Your role in exposing the truth." A complicated mix of emotions surfaced. Curiosity, apprehension, a touch of indignation. My story was mine to tell, yet Nathan had apparently incorporated it into his narrative. "His lawyer sent an advance copy," Diana continued, reaching into her bag to produce a bound manuscript. "He wanted you to have the opportunity to read it before publication, to raise any concerns about how you're portrayed." I stared at the manuscript without touching it. The title page read, "House of Cards, Confession of a Financial Fraudster," with Nathan's name below. "I'll understand if you'd rather not," Diana said gently. "No one would blame you for maintaining your distance." I considered refusing, protecting the hard-won peace I'd established. But curiosity won out. I took the manuscript, feeling its weight, literal and metaphorical. I'll read it, I decided. Not today, but soon. Diana squeezed my hand. You don't owe him anything, you know. Not your time, not your attention, certainly not your forgiveness. I know, I assured her. This isn't about what I owe Nathan. It's about understanding the full story, his perspective, his rationalizations. Knowledge is its own form of power. We finished lunch, conversation shifting to lighter topics. Diana's plans for her garden, my upcoming exhibition in Seattle, a film we both wanted to see. By the time we parted with promises to meet for dinner the following week, the manuscript had been tucked into my bag, its presence momentarily forgotten. That evening, I sat in my studio, surrounded by works in progress. The manuscript lay on my desk, still untouched. Outside, spring rain pattered against the skylights, creating a soothing backdrop for contemplation. After an hour of procrastination, organizing tools, sketching new designs, answering emails, I finally opened to the first page. I never intended to become a criminal, Nathan's book began. Like most descents into ethical compromise, mine began with small concessions, a modified report here, a delayed disclosure there, each step making the next one easier, until I found myself so far across the line I couldn't see my way back. Despite myself, I was drawn into his narrative. Nathan had always been a capable writer, his financial reports models of clarity and persuasion. Now he applied that skill to chronicling his own downfall, creating a compelling account of ambition, twisted by insecurity and opportunism. I read until midnight, absorbing his description of Gregory's methodical corruption of the firm, the incremental steps that transformed ethical professionals into conspirators. His portrayal seemed honest, sparing neither himself nor his former colleagues. Then I reached the chapter titled The Personal Cost. While I've detailed the financial crimes and their impact on clients, the greatest damage I caused was to my marriage. For 12 years, I shared my life with Jessica, an artist, teacher, and the moral center of our relationship. While I manipulated numbers to create false prosperity, she created beauty with her hands. While I chased status and validation, she built genuine connections with students and community. The contrast between us might have strengthened our relationship, providing balance and perspective. Instead, I allowed my insecurities to distance me from the one person who saw and loved the man I could have been. When Vanessa entered my professional life, strategically placed there by Gregory, I was primed for the validation she offered. The affair that followed wasn't love or even genuine attraction. It was weakness meeting opportunity, insecurity, finding temporary reassurance. I betrayed my wife not in pursuit of great passion, but in service to my smallest self, the part that craved constant affirmation and feared being truly known. I closed the manuscript, emotions tumbling through. Me. His words seemed sincere, his accountability complete. Yet something felt off. A narrative too neatly packaged, too literarily satisfying. I reopened to the acknowledgments page I'd initially skipped, scanning for insights into his writing process. There, in the third paragraph, I found it. Special thanks to Miranda Holloway, whose editorial guidance transformed my initial ramblings into coherent prose. Her belief in the redemptive power of confession gave shape to this narrative. Miranda Holloway. The name was vaguely familiar. A quick internet search confirmed my suspicion. A well-known ghostwriter specializing in redemption, narratives for disgraced executives and politicians. The knowledge shifted my perception of the manuscript. Not necessarily insincere, but certainly crafted, shaped for maximum impact, polished for public consumption. Nathan's truth filtered through professional editorial sensibilities. I set the manuscript aside, neither accepting nor rejecting its narrative. Perhaps the question wasn't whether it was completely authentic, but whether the accountability it expressed would translate into changed behavior. The following morning, I woke, early, mind still processing what I'd read. Rather than dwelling on it, I channeled my energy into clay, beginning work on a commission for a local restaurant, a set of serving platters inspired by the Oregon coastline. The physical work provided clarity. By noon, I'd reached a decision. About the manuscript, I called Diana, who answered on the second ring. I read it, I told her without preamble. And? Her tone was carefully neutral. It's well written, I said. Thoughtful, even. But it's also clearly been ghostwritten and edited for public consumption. I'd like to speak with Nathan directly before it's published. A moment of silence. You want to see him? Not necessarily in person, I clarified. A phone call would suffice, but I have questions that the book doesn't answer, at least not authentically. I'll let his lawyer know, Diana promised. Are you sure about this? Opening that door? It's not a door, it's a window, I replied. A brief, controlled exchange to satisfy my need for unfiltered truth. After that, we both continue on our separate paths. 3 days later, I received the call. The prison number appeared on my screen, momentarily transporting me back to the tumultuous period after Nathan's arrest, when similar calls had been filled with pleas and explanations I wasn't ready to hear. This time, I answered calmly, "Hello, Nathan." Jessica. His voice sounded different, the polished confidence replaced by something more subdued. "Thank you for taking my call." "Diana says you're up for parole next month." "Yes." A pause. "My lawyer is optimistic." The small talk felt absurd given our history, yet necessary as a bridge to more substantive conversation. "I read your manuscript," I said, moving us forward. "And?" The anxiety in his voice was palpable even through the prison phone system. "It's well crafted, professional. Miranda Holloway did an excellent job." A beat of silence. "Ah, you noticed that." "Of course I noticed. I was married to you for 12 years, Nathan. I know your writing voice." He sighed. "The publisher insisted on editorial support. The raw version was too. Unstructured. But the content is mine. The experience is authentic. Including the parts about me? About our marriage? Especially those parts," he said quietly. "Though words seem inadequate for the harm I caused you." I considered my next question carefully. Why write this book at all? Financial redemption? Public rehabilitation? Genuine remorse? "All of those," he admitted. "And something more. Basic. The need to make sense of how I became someone I never thought I'd be. Writing forced me to examine choices I'd previously rationalized or ignored." "And what did you learn?" I pressed. "Beyond what's in the polished manuscript." The line went quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then Nathan spoke, his voice stripped of performance. "I learned that I'd been living in fear for most of my adult life. Fear of inadequacy, fear of failure, fear of being discovered as somehow less than. Every achievement became not a source of satisfaction, but merely temporary relief from that fear." It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in years, perhaps ever. The insight hit close to home, not because I shared his specific fears, but because I recognized the universal human vulnerability beneath them. "The irony," he continued, "is that in trying to outrun that fear, I created the very situation I dreaded most. Public failure, private betrayal, the collapse of everything I'd built." "And now?" I asked. "What are you afraid of now?" "Starting over at 42 with a felony conviction and a notorious name," he admitted. "But more than that, living the rest of my life without having made amends for the damage I caused. To clients, colleagues, to you." I considered his words. The desire for redemption seemed genuine, though perhaps colored by self-interest, the natural human wish to be forgiven, to escape the weight of past mistakes. "The book portrays me as pivotal in exposing the fraud," I observed, Is that how you genuinely see it? Or is it narrative convenience? It's the truth, he said without hesitation. When everyone else was compromised or cowed by Gregory's influence, you followed the evidence, regardless of personal cost. You were the catalyst that brought everything to light. His answer satisfied something in me, not vanity, but the desire for acknowledgement of the strength I'd found in our marriage's destruction. I have a request about the book, I said. Anything, he replied quickly. If there are sections you want removed or modified— No, I interrupted. Publish it as written, but I want a statement added to the acknowledgements. Of course. What statement? I had prepared this carefully, wanted the words to be precise. Add this. To Jessica Parker, who demonstrated more courage in the aftermath of betrayal than I showed in years of ethical compromise. She neither requests nor requires my apology, but has earned my enduring respect. The line went quiet again. When Nathan spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for allowing me to include that. It's more generous than I deserve. It's not about what you deserve, I clarified. It's about what's true. We spoke for a few minutes more. Practical matters about the book's release, his post-parole plans to move to Seattle rather than Portland, his tentative steps toward rebuilding a life outside prison. Throughout, I maintained a compassionate distance, engaged but not entangled. Before we end this call, Nathan said, there's something else you should know, something not in the book. I tensed slightly. What is it? Vanessa contacted me last month. Her sentence ends soon, and I kept my voice neutral, though the mention of her name still evoked complicated feelings. She wanted to apologize, I think, for her role in everything. She asked about you, how you were doing. What did you tell her? The truth, he said, simply, that you had rebuilt your life beautifully without either of us in it, that your art and teaching were flourishing, that you had shown more resilience than both of us combined. I nodded, forgetting momentarily that he couldn't see me. That's accurate. She's writing a book too, he added, about women in finance, power dynamics, the choices she made. She'd like to interview you for it. The request was so unexpected I laughed aloud. Seriously? She wants to interview the woman whose marriage she helped destroy as part of a financial fraud scheme? I told her it was unlikely you'd agree, Nathan said, but she asked me to pass along the request anyway. I considered the audacity of it, the strange full-circle quality. Once the initial surprise faded, I found myself intrigued rather than offended. What would such a conversation reveal? What insights might emerge from two women who had occupied opposite positions in the same destructive dynamic? Tell her she can contact me through Diana, I decided. I'm not promising anything, but I'm willing to hear what she has to say. As we ended the call, I realized something had shifted. Not a dramatic transformation, but a subtle realignment. The conversation had provided a kind of closure that the legal proceedings, for all their justice, had not offered. A human recognition of harm caused and strength found, untethered from courtrooms and formal statements. The next morning, I returned to my pottery wheel with renewed focus. The commissioned platters took shape beneath my hands, each one unique yet part of a cohesive collection. As I worked, I reflected on the curious path that had led me here, how betrayal had become catalyst, how ending had become beginning. My phone chimed with a text from Zoe. Just saw the announcement about Nathan's book. You okay? I smiled at her concern. More than okay, I replied. Working on new pieces. Life goes on. And it did. Rich with creativity, community, and a hard-won wisdom that could only have emerged from brokenness, transformed into beauty. That afternoon, I received an email from the Seattle Arts Foundation inviting me to participate in their Annual ceramic exhibition. Another opportunity, another expansion of my professional world. I accepted immediately, already envisioning new pieces that would incorporate the techniques I'd been developing. As I prepared for my evening pottery class at the community center, a free program for teens from underserved neighborhoods, I considered how profoundly my definition of success had changed. Once measured in household income and social status, it now resided in creative fulfillment, meaningful connection, and the quiet satisfaction of building a life authentic to my values. The teens arrived with their usual mix of enthusiasm and adolescent nonchalance. Among them was Miguel, a 16-year-old whose initial resistance had gradually transformed into genuine talent. Tonight, he was attempting his most ambitious piece, yet a sculptural vessel inspired by his grandmother's stories of Mexico. "Ms. Parker," he called as I moved around the room, "I can't get this part right. The clay keeps collapsing." I joined him at his workstation, observing the challenge he faced. "You're trying to build too quickly," I explained. "Clay has its own timeline. You can encourage it, but not force it." "Like people," he observed with teenage wisdom. "Exactly. Like people," I agreed. "When we try to rush growth, in clay or in ourselves, we often end up with collapse instead of stability." As I demonstrated the technique for him, I reflected on my own journey of the past 2 years. The initial collapse that had seemed catastrophic had ultimately made space for reconstruction on stronger foundations. The betrayal that had broken my heart had also broken open possibilities I might never have discovered otherwise. Miguel watched, attentively, then attempted the technique himself, his young hands finding the right balance of pressure and patience. The clay responded, strengthening under his touch. "I'm getting it," he said with quiet pride. "You are," I confirmed. "Keep going." Outside the windows, Portland's evening light painted the sky in shades of promise. Within, 20 pairs of hands shaped formless clay into vessels of meaning and beauty. "Keep going." The words echoed in my thoughts, a simple truth that had carried me from devastation to renewal. Whatever came next, Nathan's book release, Vanessa's interview request, new artistic challenges, I would approach it with the same balanced combination of strength and flexibility I taught my students. The clay beneath my hands responded to thoughtful pressure, just as life responded to intentional choices. Both required presence, patience, and the courage to create something new from whatever material circumstances provided. The Seattle Arts Foundation exhibition opened on a crisp autumn evening, the gallery space transformed by dramatic lighting and thoughtful curation. My collection, 7 pieces exploring transformation through deliberate breaking and restoration, occupied a prominent alcove near the exhibition entrance. "They positioned you perfectly," Diana whispered, squeezing my arm as we surveyed the space during the private viewing. "Everyone sees your work first." "Strategic placement," Marcus added with pride. "They know quality when they see it." I smiled at their enthusiasm, touched by their presence. They had driven 3 hours from Portland to attend the opening, insisting it was non-negotiable despite my assurances that I would understand if they couldn't make it. "The curator told me my pieces have already generated interest from collectors," I admitted, still adjusting to the reality of my work being valued in financial terms. "And the community center director from Fremont wants to discuss a possible workshop series." Diana beamed. "See? This is just the beginning. Seattle today, who knows where tomorrow?" The gallery hummed with conversations and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Art critics mingled with collectors and fellow artists, creating the particular energy unique to exhibition openings. Part celebration, part evaluation, part networking opportunity. I moved through the space with growing confidence, discussing my techniques and inspirations with interested attendees. 2 years ago, such interactions would have triggered intense anxiety. Now they felt natural, an extension of the teaching role I'd come to embrace. "Ms. Parker?" I turned to find a woman in her early 60s approaching, elegantly dressed in minimalist black that marked her as a serious collector or gallery owner. "Eleanor Hoffman," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "I've been following your work since your Portland exhibition last year." The name registered immediately. Hoffman, the massive account that had been at the center of Gregory Wilson's fraud scheme, the family whose trust had been most egregiously violated by the firm. "Ms. Hoffman," I acknowledged, shaking her hand. "I'm familiar with your name, though not from art circles." She smiled slightly. "Yes, I imagine you would be. My family's finances were rather central to your ex-husband's legal troubles." The directness of her approach surprised me. Most people avoided mentioning Nathan or the scandal, treating it as an uncomfortable subject best left untouched. "I hope the resolution provided some measure of justice," I offered carefully. "The financial restitution was adequate," she replied, with the casual tone of someone for whom money had never been a primary concern. "But that's not why I wanted to meet you." "Oh?" "Your work," she gestured toward my installation. "It speaks to something beyond mere aesthetic appeal. There's authentic transformation in these pieces, an honest engagement with damage and repair." Her observation went straight to the heart of my artistic intention. "That's very perceptive." "I recognize the process," Eleanor said simply. "After discovering my family's trust had been systematically plundered, I went through something similar. The betrayal forces a reckoning, with trust, with judgment, with one's understanding of reality itself. The parallel struck me profoundly. Though the specifics differed, we had both experienced fundamental betrayals by men who had presented themselves as trustworthy stewards. "How did you move forward?" I asked, genuinely curious about her journey. "By reclaiming narrative control," she replied without hesitation. "I refused to be cast as merely a victim in someone else's story of greed. I became instead the protagonist in a story of accountability and renewal." Her words resonated with my own experience. The shift from passive recipient of betrayal to active agent of justice and personal reconstruction. "That's why I'm interested in acquiring your centerpiece," Eleanor continued, indicating the largest work in my collection. A vessel that had been broken into 17 distinct pieces, then reconstructed with gold seams to create a form more complex and compelling than the original. "The Fracturing," I supplied its title. "Precisely. It captures both the breaking and the becoming." She studied me thoughtfully. "Would you consider a commission as well? I'm establishing a foundation focused on financial literacy for women. Our headquarters could benefit from a signature piece that embodies transformation through adversity." The opportunity was significant, both financially and as a platform for my work to engage with a meaningful cause. We exchanged contact information, agreeing to discuss details over lunch the following week. As Eleanor moved on to view other exhibitions, Diana appeared at my elbow. "Was that Eleanor Hoffman, of the Hoffman Trust?" I nodded, still processing the encounter. "She wants to buy The Fracturing and commission a new piece for her foundation." Diana's eyes widened. "Jessica, that's huge. The Hoffmans are major art patrons. Their collection is internationally renowned. It feels appropriate somehow," I mused. Both of us creating something meaningful from Gregory's destruction. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and connections. By the time the event concluded, I had sold 5 pieces, received 2 commission inquiries, and been invited to speak at a symposium on therapeutic arts practices at the University of Washington. Later, in the quiet of my hotel room, I sat by the window overlooking Seattle's twinkling skyline, reflecting on Eleanor's words about reclaiming narrative control. Her approach resonated with decisions I'd made throughout my recovery process, choosing how to interpret events, determining what meaning to extract from pain, crafting a future not defined by victimhood. My phone chimed with a text message. "Zoe, checking in. How was the opening? Sell everything? Become famous?" I smiled, typing back. Not everything, not famous, but definitely successful. Tell you all about it when I get back. Another chime followed almost immediately. Not Zoe this time, but an unknown number. The message was brief. Congratulations. On the Seattle exhibition, your work continues to evolve beautifully. V. Vanessa. I stared at the text, unsure how to feel about this unexpected contact. Diana must have mentioned the exhibition to Nathan during one of their visits, and he to Vanessa during their book collaboration. I considered ignoring it, maintaining the boundary I'd established. But curiosity won out. Thank you. How did you know about the exhibition? I replied. The response came quickly. I follow your career online. Hope that's not unsettling. Your transformation from that night at the anniversary party has been remarkable to witness, even from a distance. The mention of the anniversary party, the night that had changed everything, sent a brief shiver of remembered pain through me. But it was dulled now, a phantom sensation rather than fresh wound. Writing about it in your book? I asked directly. Only with your permission. That's actually why I've been wanting to talk. To hear your perspective rather than assuming or projecting. Her approach was different than I'd expected. More respectful, less presumptuous. Whether this represented genuine growth or calculated image rehabilitation was impossible to determine via text. I'll consider it, I replied after careful thought. When is your manuscript due? 3 months. No pressure intended. Your story is yours to tell or withhold. The exchange left me thoughtful. Vanessa had been both perpetrator and pawn in the events that dismantled my marriage, deliberately seducing Nathan as part of Gregory's scheme, yet also manipulated by forces she hadn't fully understood. People were rarely just villains or victims. Most existed in the complicated middle ground, making choices within constraints, acting sometimes from strength and sometimes from weakness. I set the phone aside without responding further, returning my attention to the Seattle skyline. Whatever decision I ultimately made about Vanessa's interview request, it would be from a position of strength rather than reactivity. My story was indeed mine to tell, or not, on my own terms. The following morning brought brilliant autumn sunshine streaming through my hotel window. I had arranged to meet with the Fremont Community Center director for brunch, followed by a visit to a clay supplier renowned for their specialized glazes. As I prepared for the day, my phone rang. Diana, calling earlier than expected. "Did I wake you?" she asked when I answered. "No, I've been up for hours. Too much coffee at the reception, probably." She hesitated, then continued with unusual caution. "I'm calling because, well, there's something you should know before you see it elsewhere." My mind raced through possibilities. Is it Nathan? Did something happen with his parole? No, nothing like that. It's about Gregory Wilson. The name still triggered an involuntary tension. What about him? He's dead. Apparent suicide in his minimum security facility. Marcus just saw it on the morning news. I sat on the edge of the bed, absorbing this unexpected development. Gregory had been sentenced to 12 years for his orchestration of the fraud scheme, a term many felt was insufficiently severe given the millions stolen and lives disrupted. How? I asked finally. Details are sparse, Diana replied. The news report just said he was found in his cell early this morning. No signs of foul play. A complex emotion swept through me, not satisfaction, or grief exactly, but a strange sense of conclusion. Gregory's death closed a chapter that had remained partially open despite the trials and sentencing. "Are you okay?" Diana asked when I didn't immediately respond. "Yes," I said truthfully. "It's not something I would have wished for, but I can't pretend to feel sorrow either." "No one would expect you to," she assured me. "I just wanted you to hear it from me, rather than seeing a headline or getting blindsided by a reporter's question." After ending the call, I stood by the window, watching the morning ferry cross Elliott Bay. Gregory Wilson had orchestrated destruction on a massive scale: financial, professional, personal. He had treated people as pieces on a chessboard, manipulating lives with calculated precision. Yet his death brought no sense of triumph or justice served. If anything, it felt like a final evasion, one last strategic move to avoid fully facing the consequences of his actions. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Just heard about Gregory. Thought you should know I had nothing to do with it," despite what some might assume. The defensive tone struck me as odd until I remembered the unsubstantiated rumors that had circulated during the trial. Whispers about Gregory's connections to more serious criminals. Suggestions that those he had implicated might seek retribution. "I never thought you did," I responded simply. "Are you okay?" he asked. The question mirrored Diana's, reflecting their shared concern about how Gregory's death might affect me. But the truth was, Gregory had already lost his power to impact my emotional state. "I'm fine," I wrote back. His story was already over for me. This is just a footnote. I continued with my day as planned, meeting the community center director and discussing the potential workshop series. We connected immediately, over shared ideas about art's therapeutic potential, particularly for communities facing economic and social challenges. "What you're describing isn't just art instruction," she said as we finished brunch. "It's emotional literacy through creative expression, exactly what our young people need." We outlined a 12-week program that would combine technical pottery, instruction with mindfulness, and personal narrative development. By the time we parted, the framework was established for what would become my first major community initiative outside Portland. At the clay supplier's studio later that afternoon, I lost myself in the sensory experience of testing new materials, the different textures of specialized clays, the rich potential of innovative glazes, the technical discussions with fellow artists about firing temperatures and chemical interactions. It was there, surrounded by the raw materials of my craft, that I finally processed my feelings about Gregory's death. The man who had viewed human relationships as merely tactical advantages had died alone in a prison cell. The architect of elaborate financial schemes had ended his own story in the most reductive way possible. There was a bleak symmetry to it, perhaps even a lesson about the ultimate emptiness of pursuing power and wealth through deception and manipulation. That evening, I received another text from Vanessa. "You've probably heard about Gregory. I'm struggling with how to feel. Thought you might understand that complexity." Her message surprised me with its vulnerability and implicit recognition of our shared experience as women whose lives had been significantly altered by Gregory's machinations. "I understand," I replied after consideration. "When someone has caused such harm, there's no simple emotional response to their death." "Exactly," she wrote back immediately. "Relief, closure, emptiness, lingering anger, all mixed together. Add confusion about how much agency he truly exerted versus how much we gave him through our own choices," I added, articulating a question that had occupied much of my healing journey. Her response was slow in coming. That's the hardest part. Recognizing my own complicity while also acknowledging his manipulation. Still working through where that line falls. The exchange continued for nearly an hour, an unexpectedly thoughtful dialogue between two women who had occupied opposing positions in the same destructive dynamic. Not friendship, certainly, but a peculiar kind of understanding that few others could share. "If you still want that interview for your book, I'm open to discussing it when I return to Portland," I offered finally. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The remainder of my Seattle trip unfolded productively, finalizing the sale of my exhibition pieces, meeting with Eleanor Hoffman to discuss the Foundation Commission, exploring the city's vibrant arts districts for inspiration. Throughout, I remained centered in a hard-won equilibrium that neither Gregory's death nor unexpected connections with the past could destabilize. 3 days later, I returned to Portland, driving directly from Seattle to the community college where my weekend pottery course awaited. The familiar faces of my students, Emma now confidently centering clay on her wheel, the elderly gentleman creating surprisingly delicate vessels with his weathered hands, provided immediate grounding in the present. "Welcome back, Professor." Emma greeted me warmly. "How was the fancy Seattle art world?" "Less intimidating than I expected," I replied, setting up the demonstration wheel. "And somehow less satisfying than teaching all of you." It wasn't mere politeness. The exhibition's success had been gratifying, but watching my students discover their creative voices brought a different, deeper fulfillment. "Today we're exploring intentional imperfection," I announced once everyone had settled. "The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in transience and imperfection." I demonstrated a technique for creating deliberately asymmetrical forms, encouraging students to release attachments to conventional standards of correctness in their work. "Perfect symmetry can be technically impressive but emotionally static," I explained, purposely applying uneven pressure to create an organic, slightly tilted vessel. Forms that incorporate subtle irregularity often feel more alive, more human. As the class progressed, I moved among the students, offering guidance and encouragement. Emma caught my attention, her brow furrowed in concentration as she worked. "Everything okay?" I asked, pausing beside her. She glanced up, her expression surprisingly resolute. "I'm doing something different today. Instead of fighting the wobble that keeps happening, I'm trying to make it intentional, part of the design." I watched as she carefully emphasized the natural irregularity that had previously frustrated her, transforming what might have been seen as a flaw into a distinctive artistic choice. "That's it exactly," I nodded appreciatively. "Working with the material's natural tendencies rather than against them." "I realized something," Emma said, not looking up from her work. "I've been trying to force the clay to be something it isn't, perfectly symmetrical, completely predictable. But maybe its character comes from those unpredictable elements." Her insight extended beyond pottery, reflecting a wisdom about life that many never fully grasp. "The unexpected turns often define who we become," I agreed, "even the painful ones." After class, I returned home to my quiet house, now fully and confidently mine in every sense. The renovation I'd begun 6 months earlier was complete. The space transformed to reflect my evolving aesthetic and practical needs. The formal dining room had become a planning studio for community art initiatives. The master bedroom now featured a reading nook overlooking the garden Diana had helped me redesign. A package waited on my porch, an advance copy of Nathan's book, now fully published and beginning its promotional cycle. I brought it inside but didn't immediately open it, instead moving through my evening routine with deliberate presence, preparing a simple dinner, responding to emails about upcoming workshops, sketching preliminary designs for Eleanor Hoffman's commission. Later, curled on my sofa with a glass of wine, I finally examined the book. The cover featured a stark image of a house of cards mid-collapse, Nathan's name and the title in bold typography beneath. I turned to the acknowledgements page, finding the statement I had requested included exactly as written. The finished book would soon be in bookstores nationwide, Nathan's perspective on our shared history available for public consumption. Yet this reality no longer threatened my sense of self or ownership of my own narrative. His story was his to tell, just as mine was mine. In the quiet evening hours, I began sketching more detailed concepts for the Hoffman Foundation Commission. Eleanor had specified only that the piece should embody transformation through adversity, otherwise giving me complete artistic freedom. As my pencil moved across paper, a design emerged that differed from my previous work. Rather than emphasizing breakage and repair, this concept explored emergence, how pressure and constraint could create entirely new forms rather than merely damaged versions of original structures. The central element would be a vessel that appeared to be shedding an outer layer, revealing a more refined form within. The technical challenges were significant, but the metaphorical resonance felt exactly right for a foundation dedicated to empowering women through financial education. When the design was complete, I sat back, satisfied with the direction. It represented not just a creative evolution, but a personal one, moving beyond defining myself in relation to past damage toward embracing continuous emergence and growth. My phone chimed with a message from Zoe. "Dinner tomorrow? Maya's bringing her new girlfriend. Could use moral support while I'm third wheeling." I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. Should I bring dessert?" The simple exchange, friends making plans, normal life continuing, filled me with quiet gratitude. The extraordinary events that had begun with that devastating anniversary party had eventually given way to a new ordinary, one with deeper appreciation for friendship, creativity, and authentic connection. 2 years ago, I had watched my husband introduce his mistress at what should have been a celebration of our marriage. The ground beneath my feet had shifted irrevocably. Everything I thought I knew revealed as illusion. Yet from that catastrophic moment had emerged a life more genuine and fulfilling than what had been lost. Not despite the breaking, but because of it. Because shattering had revealed strengths and possibilities previously obscured. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. A woman approaching 40 with growing confidence. Etched in her expression and silvering strands beginning to appear in her dark hair. Not the woman I had expected to become, but perhaps the one I was always meant to be. My final thought before sleep claimed me was not of Nathan, Vanessa, or Gregory, the characters who had featured so prominently in my story's dramatic turning point. Instead, I thought of tomorrow's claywork, the commission design, the students whose creative journeys had become intertwined with my own. The past had shaped me, certainly, but it was the future, with its boundless creative potential, that now commanded my imagination and energy. The breaking had been necessary. The becoming was the gift. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.